So welcome everyone for week 2 of the speech competition. Thank you so much for being here. We have a lot of students presenting today, so let's buckle our seatbelts for that. I'm just going to run down quickly the rules for the speech competition. So everyone's speech should be 3 to 5 minutes long and you will be timed. I recommend having your phone timer in front of you so you know exactly how much time you have remaining. Everyone is going to present a topic of their choice, and even if you did not send in a proposal, you are still expected to present today. Students must keep their cameras on when you are presenting to be as engaging as possible with your audience. Your face should be visible and not just your eyes and forehead. And when you are not presenting, please mute your microphone. I'll also ask you now to change your view setting on Zoom from gallery to speaker so you can see exactly who is presenting. And as iterated before, we're going to be awarding the top 5 students plus a popular award with monetary prizes. So the first place will be winning $1,000, second place will be winning $500, third place will be winning $300, fourth place will be winning $150. Fifth place will win $100, and then the popular award winner will receive a $100 gift card. So with that said, let's get started with today. First, we have our first 3 students who are going to be presenting is first Hannah Kim, and then we have Hee-Won Moon, and then we have Rachel Ha. So Hannah, whenever you're ready, I will start the timer.
Thank you. Kidneys, $60,000. Heart, $1 million. Value of life, $0. We live in a world split between heaven and hell, with illegal brokers dominating the sadistic world by taking innocent, vulnerable beings and ripping them of their organs and eventually their unvalued lives. Organ trafficking is a plague that has mercilessly diseased our nation, our people, and our core values. This is a double-sided blade, as on the other end, legal organ recipients suffer with over 20 people dying each day due to the inability to get a suitable transplant. This is a global problem whose only heroes are the common man. The market of illicit organ trade is fueled by the ever-decreasing legal organ donor pool. With such a high demand but low supply, it was inevitable until the black market and illegal donor brokers tried to take advantage of this opportunity. With this in mind, these ruthless demons scammed, overcharged, and took advantage of people from third world countries, giving them not even the guarantee of coming out of the operation alive. For us, this sounds like insanity. However, for the other half of the world, this is a reality. The rather depressing truth is, it is common to hear horror stories of those that were victims to organ trade. I insist you to visualize these. South America, 6-year-old girls sold for $20,000, never to see their families again, and never to see another day. African refugees promising brokers their kidneys for compensation in hopes of making enough money to pursue a better life. Without proper healthcare supplies, during the operation, they wake up screaming in agony and possibly end up dead. Even with a slim chance of survival, only 50% of participants don't even get the compensation that they were originally promised. In these third world countries, people are being exploited, killed, and torn from any chance at living a prosperous life. However, this humanitarian crisis is not affecting only lesser developed nations. On the other end of the organ trafficking spectrum, people are dying daily from a major shortage of organ donors. Over 100,000 candidates are waiting for an organ transplant in the United States alone. With the average time on a transplant waiting list being 2 to 3 years, they often get desperate and look for alternative means, taking on the dilemma of possibly buying an organ that ruined someone else's life to get to them. While one side is being crushed by the system, the other side is being coerced by the false hope of just a possibility at a better life. However, we as people were given an opportunity to rise to the occasion and stop this dilemma from progressively getting worse. As humans, not all of us can be expected to donate, advocate, or volunteer to help this cause. However, simply signing up to be an organ donor can change a life. Becoming an organ donor doesn't mean necessarily giving up your organs at the drop of a hat. It means allowing your bodily organs to be recycled after your death into the donor pool. Once over the age of 18, you can become an organ, eye, or tissue donor regardless of your medical history. With more people becoming donors, we are presented with the hope of ending the consumption portion of this exchange, resulting in the eventual termination of illicit organ trafficking, as it will lose value. Becoming an organ donor is the easiest way to be proactive, being a hero, and continuing your moral legacy long after your life has passed. When the world is lost and divided, we need to be the guides and the peacemakers, because no one is going to fix our problems besides us. Either we can sit back and do nothing, or we can blossom change and fuel a future for thousands of lives that could be potentially saved. I insist you to consider changing a life and hopefully changing this world. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Hannah. That was a really powerful call to action. So next we have Hee-won. Hee-won, are you here?
Yeah.
Great. So whenever you're ready, we'll get started. Or, oh wait, hold on one second. Judges, do we need more time to jot down any thoughts about Hannah's presentation? Great. Okay, well, Hee-won, whenever you're ready.
Today marks 1 year since 2019 SSAT results were released. I was an anxious 8th grader who luckily made it into my first choice, the Bronx High School of Science. Countless days and nights, as well as expensive funding, have gone into studying for this extremely selected test, and I have no regrets. Although my decision was controversial in the SSAT community, I believe that there are steps and solutions to include in our middle school years to help prep students for all 3 grades to get an acceptance to the 8 prestigious New York City high schools. I'm aware that many of the participants are not from New York and don't fully understand what the SSAT is. The SSAT, otherwise known as Specialized High School Admissions Test, is a test administered every year for all 8th graders and some 9th graders who chose to take it again in New York. Specialized high schools range from focusing on art and math to science and allow creative freedom within the school. The curriculum is fast-paced and gives students more opportunities to colleges. It is a 3-hour time test containing 114 questions based on an 800-score system. It is held in October or early November, but this year's test got postponed to January due to COVID-19. Most specialized high schools cutoff is around 500, and Bronx Science was 530 in 2019. All acceptances are based on one test score, deeming it to be a stressful and selective test. I spent my summer going into 8th grade in a 7-hour prep class 5 days a week. I was tired and frustrated, and I didn't look forward to weekends to the extensive homework given by my instructors. I knew how much I needed to get into the school, as my older brother already attended one of the specialized high schools. I know that going to regular school had no disadvantages and I would still be a high schooler, but the pressure of my mom's standards forced me to aim higher than what I could actually shoot at. So I studied every day, even risking my 8th grade class averages, to understand reading comprehension and basic algebra. I had expensive tutoring outside school and had no sleep schedule or time to do any sports. I am sure I'm not the only one struggling to balance tests and school, so many students broke down under pressure. If middle schools offered free prep for the SAT, it would have saved an immense amount of money and pressure for students. Free prep means balancing school with the test and ultimately offers a better choice. I personally had a rough time studying for this test. However, I do not think the test should be removed. There are many solutions such as offering free prep courses in school and focusing on this test only. Out of the 80,000 8th graders in New York, only 28,000 choose to take this test and around 6,000 get accepted. Some students in low-income areas qualify for the Discovery Program, which allows to get them in with a score under the cutoff school. This test is extremely supportive of all, and the city is doing its best to include everybody. With that said, it is extremely hard and puts students under pressure. However, they can take this as a learning experience and try again the following year. I believe that is worth it in the end, and those who get admitted get a better education, but it comes with a high cost.
Great, thank you, Hee-won. Yeah, it's definitely, I think we had another student talk about the SHSAT, and it's definitely a hot button topic in New York City, especially within the Asian American community here. So thank you. Next we have Rachel Ha, and then after Rachel we have Teza Cha, and then Sean Lee. Judges, are we ready for the next presentation from Rachel? Is Rachel Ha here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Hi, Rachel. So whenever you're ready, we'll get started.
So to start off, I want you to take a couple seconds and think about your least favorite three-letter word. Now, for instance, if you have a cat allergy, you may have thought of the word cat. Or if you hate wearing hats because it gives you that weird hat head, you may have thought of the word hat. But for me, it's the word SAT, S-A-T. Now, I'm sure every single one of you has taken or at least heard of the SAT exam. And if you've heard of the SAT, you've most likely heard of its good brother, AP. Now, who is AP and SAT's parent? That would be the College Board. Now, the College Board claims to be a nonprofit charitable organization that provides high schoolers with the opportunity to access higher education even within their very high school classrooms. And it sounds promising, but let me tell you, and I think you already knew in your heart, why the College Board is a scam. Now, there's three simple reasons. First are the empty promises, then there's the lack of standardization, and lastly, there's what I consider monetary fraud. Now, first off, AP exams are praised for being able to provide college credits. And although that may be true in some cases, many top colleges restrict AP credits. In 2016, Paul Weinstein, a director at Johns Hopkins University, led a study that revealed that of the top 153 colleges, 86% of them restricted AP credits in more than one way. And I'm not saying that all AP students aim for those top colleges, because frankly, taking advantage of those less selective schools is the better option in terms of credit. But one can infer that a student who takes multiple APs each year in order to try to stand out and stresses about attaining good grades and scores at the end of the year is one who is aiming for some of those more selective schools. And yes, this is more in the hands of the colleges rather than the College Board itself, but you would assume that after a year of immense content crammed into such a short amount of time, and being expected to remember something you learned in September for a test in May, that it would assure some kind of reward, but nothing is ever guaranteed. That leads me to my second point, being that for an organization that thrives off of their standardized tests, there's a great lack of standardization. From my own experience, after taking my AP biology test, I was texting some friends who were very frustrated at how hard the exam was. However, in my opinion, it was so easy. Now, if I had been getting good grades in my bio class, I wouldn't be saying anything, but last year in my AP bio class, I got C's and D's on almost every unit test and maybe a B if I was lucky, in contrast to my friends who got A's and constant 100s. Now, at first, I thought they were just exaggerating, but after comparing the questions we got, it was obvious that the questions I received were much easier and required much less thinking than the questions they received. But this lack of regularity has been seen multiple times in the past. For example, the August 2018 SAT was a recycled test with answers that were already available on the internet. And not only that, the June 2018 SAT was fairly easy, therefore having an insane curve that took off 30 points for every single question wrong. Now, moving on to my last point, for an organization claiming to be nonprofit, they sure do make a lot of profit. With each basic SAT costing $52 and a single AP exam costing $98, it's insane how much money they're making. Last year, I really considered getting a refund as I was paying $98 for a 45-minute shortened exam, which basically meant I was paying over $2 for every minute of that test. But on the bigger spectrum, because College Board is considered a nonprofit under the National Tax Code, it's exempt from needing to pay all those hefty taxes. With over $1 billion in revenue each year and almost $100 million in profit, they sure do benefit a lot from capitalizing off of 14 to 18-year-olds. Now, overall, as College Board holds a monopoly over the education system, there's really not much hope for the near future that College Board will try to solve all their problems. And they already benefit so much socially, monetarily, and politically from profiting off of high schoolers and using that all for their own gains, so why would they? Nonetheless, I hope that one day all students will be able to put their egos aside and unite to see the downfall of the scam that is College Board. When that day comes, I'll be looking forward to going on Twitter and not only seeing Mr. Trevor Packer's angsty tweets, but also the memes that follow any incident regarding the College Board. Thank you.
Great, Rachel. It's definitely, I think I'm with you there. I'm sure a lot of us are with you there too about how can it be that a nonprofit organization is making this much profit on students? Ooh. Anyway, great job. So also, I guess I forgot to mention, you can, give your feedback or words of encouragement to your fellow peers in the chat. You can also use the reactions function. So I have in Zoom, so it'll have like a little emoji on that side on the little corner of your camera. So once again, thank you, Rachel. Next, we have Teza Cha, and then after Teza is Sean, and then we have Thomas. Teza, are you here today? I guess not. How about Sean Lee? Is Sean Lee here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Sean. So whenever you're ready, we will start the clock.
Hello. I would like to share my research on KAYF today. Most people in the US eat meat in most of their meals. However, they do not exactly know how their meat is produced. More than 90% of the meat that Americans consume comes from a farming method called the concentrated animal feeding operation, which is also known as KAYF. These KAYF are large-scale factory farms that mass-produce livestock, which harms the environment and the human health in the process. KAYF are used by most farming companies because this farming method produces an abundant amount of meat by raising animals at highest density, while having very low production costs. It is true that the KAYF are very helpful. However, these KAYF should have more restrictions and regulation because of the many damages it causes to the environment and the human health. One of the environmental problems that is caused by the KAYF is water pollution. In KAYF, more than thousands of livestock are concentrated into one confinement, so there is lots of waste produced by these livestock. The farmers store the urine and the feces from these livestock in lagoons. These lagoons serve as a storage basin for the animal waste. Occasionally, farmers flush this waste into nearby bodies of water. This waste combines with the runoff from the fertilized fields to pollute the water sources surrounding the KAYF. When these wastes enter the water, it has access to nutrients, pathogens, heavy metals, and excrete hormones, which are really bad for the environment and the human health. These pollutants not only negatively affect aquatic lives, but can also lead to severe impacts on people who consume crops produced nearby the polluted body of water. Furthermore, livestock in KAYF are often found living in their own feces and urine, stimulating the spread of diseases such as avian flu, foot, mouth disease, and mad cow disease. In order to combat the disease, farmers usually give antibiotics to the livestock. In many cases, however, antibiotics are used for disease prevention instead of treatment. In addition to being used to combat the spread of diseases, antibiotics are commonly used to encourage the growth of livestock. This overuse of antibiotics increases the risk of livestock developing immunity to antibiotics, which ironically makes the livestock more vulnerable to diseases. After these antibiotics are consumed by the livestock, it is released back into the environment in the form of milk, meat, or waste, which can affect the environment that absorbs them and people who eat these products. So, KAYF can cause serious harm to human health. Because of these risks to the environment and human health, I think that KAYF should be placed under stricter guidelines, and we should try not to buy meat produced by these KAYF. Instead, we could buy products produced in the free-range farming method, which is a better alternative for KAYF. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Let me unspotlight your video. There we go. Thank you, Sean, for your presentation. Also, I guess before we get started with the next presentation, I think just to avoid any sort of audio issues or any issues with feedback, I think it'll be good to use headset with microphones, so it'll pick up your audio a little bit better. With that said, after Sean, we have Thomas. Is Thomas here? Thomas Source? Nar. Okay. So after the next presentation, after Sean, will be Danielle Yoon. And then after Danielle is June Park, and then Aiden Kim. Is Danielle here?
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Danielle. So Danielle, June, and then we have Aiden. So whenever you're ready, Danielle, we'll get started.
Growing up, I would spend hours of my day putting together elaborate performances with my stuffed animals, choreographing dances in my basement, or pretending to be a host on my own talk show. My day was full of things I wanted to do, and I was who I wanted to be. The true nature of who I was untouched, as I had yet to experience our society's unsparing judgment. I had an amazing childhood in a small town in Iowa, full of memories where I learned life's pains and joys. I encountered the first feeling of losing someone when my neighbor's dog Kirby died. I developed ambition when I started competing in piano competitions. I experienced excitement so immense I couldn't even put into words when our town's first water park was built. My family nurtured me to express myself vividly and boldly through my passions and thoughts. As a young kid, I didn't realize how liberating it was to be able to present yourself to the outside world without putting any censorship or walls up. The summer before I began middle school, my world seemingly got flipped upside down when we moved to Dallas, Texas. You can probably imagine my horror when my parents announced that we were leaving our comfortable, safe town that consisted of cornfields and a single Target to one of the biggest cities in America. I remember being surprised at the sheer amount and variety of students in my new school. With more diversity, you would think it would be easier to be comfortable being yourself. But even the wide spectrum of people couldn't escape the ceaseless power of social normalcy and conformity. I and many other students quickly became aware that life was going to be a lot easier if you didn't stick out. So as sixth grade progressed, I began to notice my peers change around me to bend themselves to fit what was viewed as socially acceptable and the norm. Before I knew it, I had changed too. It was subtle things that began to accumulate, thinking twice before putting on a shirt, taking out that Korean snack my mom had packed for lunch, or hesitating to express my interests. I started letting the fear of what I believed others thought of me dictate how I lived my life. This only increased as I moved through middle school. I remember a specific moment in 8th grade science class where I entered the classroom, greeted by BTS's DNA music video playing loud and proud at the front of the classroom. My teacher had put it on in efforts to bring some excitement as classmates were beginning to file in. However, I felt everything but excitement as the other students began to speak out. Why are they wearing makeup? Or this song is weird, what are they even saying? Being the only Korean, I remember wanting to disappear as I felt people's stares beginning to find their way towards me. From that day forward, I made a point to avoid and adamantly deny any interest in K-pop whenever it was brought up. And worse, I almost never talked about or explored anything related to my culture. That day was one of many experiences where my want to fit in was actually causing me to shut out my heritage, how I was raised, my roots. When COVID hit, staying home turned out to be a kind of blessing in disguise. I hadn't been at such ease and comfort in a long time, and I felt a sense of relief being able to finish out the school year without constantly double-checking myself. I started to realize that no matter what you do, someone is always going to have something to say. All the choices are wrong to begin with, so why not choose the wrong choice you want to? Since last March, I've been doing things because I want to and I genuinely enjoy it. And this has allowed me to start coming back to myself. I've been creating art, joining clubs, reading amazing literature, discovering new music, becoming more familiar with the Korean culture and language, and involving in organizations like KAYF's Waffle program. In a society where you can get merciless hate just because of your identity, It is now more important than ever to express your sincere self and who you are at your core loudly and without shame. Although I may not be putting on stuffed animal performances or pretending to be Oprah anymore, I'm ready to face this world honestly and unapologetically, embracing the most true version of who I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And yeah, I think a lot of us can relate with, COVID has hit a lot of us really hard, and we can feel pretty isolated during the lockdowns and stuff. But one benefit of that is that we can be ourselves without having that self-consciousness dictate who we are. So thank you. After Danielle, we have June Park. Is June here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, June. And then after June, we have Aiden, and then we will have Jennifer. Is Aiden and Jennifer here?
I'm here.
Also
Aiden's
here.
Hi. Okay, so June, whenever you're ready, we will start the clock.
Yeah, sorry, just give me a quick second. I'm setting up my timer.
No problem.
Your dog is really cute. Okay.
Oops. Okay, I'm going to start now. All right, so as we start looking at, as I heard about the speech competition, I kind of scrambled and I was thinking, oh, what could I do? What could I speak about? And since this is the Korean American Youth Foundation, I thought about maybe speaking about something related to Korean Americans. So something I thought up of as I was thinking was the Korean language. So Hangul, if you guys don't know, I'm pretty sure you guys know. So Hangul is our Korean language created by Sejong Daewang. And the more I thought about it and talking with other Korean American friends, I noticed that some of them could speak the language really well, almost flawlessly, while others basically knew nothing. So kind of thought that was quite interesting, and I wanted to speak on that a little bit. So why does that happen in the first place? So for me, myself, I personally speak Korean somewhat well. I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I can speak it, I'd say, almost fluently, but not quite, and I can write it relatively decently. So something I want to speak about was, why don't we learn it? I mean, it's pretty simple, right? You learn new language, and yeah, but the problem is learning language isn't really easy. And a couple of reasons why I feel like it's hard to learn that language. Part of it is that we don't get really taught it in the school, if that makes sense. Of course, there's the generic languages you go into school, like Spanish, Italian, French, the three basic languages that you generally hear in school. But for some people, at least where I live, where's the Korean, where's the Japanese, where's the Chinese? At least, language that seemed more appealing to me. Yet I can't learn any of that because I don't have access to it. Sure, you have sources in the internet like Duolingo or Rosetta Stone, but honestly, it's not really a good substitute for actually learning a language with a teacher. Let's think about it in Spanish class. If you're taking lessons from a teacher, it's so much easier to get it because it's more personal. You can speak it, you can write it, you can read it, and you can communicate through it. But the problem with using an app like that, it just doesn't have the same feeling. It doesn't feel human. It just feels like you're reading and you're translating. But in the end, why does that really matter to us as Korean Americans? Do we really have to learn the language to be Korean Americans? I mean, obviously you don't have to learn it to be a Korean American, but I think the important part is it's a huge disconnect between us as Korean Americans and our Korean roots. Because even if you knew the language, you still wouldn't feel as connected, obviously, because in a sense you're separated. But at the same time, as Korean Americans, it's hard to communicate with your parents. I'm sure some of you want to speak to your Koreans. Your parents talk to you in Korean, and you respond back to English. It'd be something go like, "Hey mom, do we have chips at home?" And it'd be, 준아, 우리가 지금 과자는 안 샀거든. 이제 내가 커스코 가서 좀 사올게. And then I'd be okay. But the problem is that there's a gap, and sometimes I wish I could speak to my mom so she can understand me just as easily as I want to understand her. And yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, June. Yeah, I feel like a lot of us could definitely relate to that. And I love how you said that, you know, you don't need to speak Korean to be a Korean American. Like, you know, regardless of your language proficiency, we all are. Having said that, though, I definitely could relate to this desire to connect more with our family through language. So thank you, June. After June, we have, oh yeah, Rachel said Konglish is the only language I'm confident in. So relatable. So after June, we have Aiden and then Jennifer. And then after Jennifer will be Rebecca and Matthew Park. So Aiden, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Every 4 years, more than 1 billion people worldwide tune in to experience history and excitement. Is this a presidential election? No, this is a FIFA World Cup. This event is the largest by so far when it comes to the sports of soccer. According to FIFA financial statement, the 2014 World Cup held in Brazil generated $2.6 billion in profit. There is much more to the World Cup formats than the beginner soccer followers think. The modern format can be easily broken down into 3 simple parts. Today, I will share with you how a small competition turned into an iconic global coming together of the sports from every corner around the world. Let me begin by talking about the beginning stages of how this historic competition began. When the FIFA congressional members saw the success and popularity that soccer had in the Olympics, they decided to create their own world competition. FIFA was first originated in Paris, France in 1904, and they organized a bidding process where countries would make their arguments for why the competition should be played in their respective country. In 1929, the first World Cup hosted country rights were given to Uruguay after the nation said they will pay for the travel expenses and share the profits with other countries. The first World Cup would be played in the same year as the 100th anniversary of Uruguay's independence in 1930. According to FIFA.com, the first World Cup had only 16 teams specially invited to participate in the knockout style elimination. Knockout style can be simply explained as when you lose a game, you're out of the competition. With this flawed system, the best team in the competition could have one rough game and be knocked out indefinitely with a single loss. This happened at 2 of the biggest powerhouses in football, Argentina and Brazil in 1930. After the 1930 World Cup, FIFA decided that they needed a qualifying stage beforehand to make it more fair. With the implication of qualifying rounds for 1934 World Cup, the competition improved and made it more fair. Qualifying rounds worked by splitting every country up into 6 different continental zones, which are Africa, Asia, South America, Oceania, Europe, and North America. Each zone gets allocated a certain number of spots that gives a playoff berth in the knockout rounds. These spots add up to 16 teams, and the teams located in the same zone play against one another in a league setup with the point system. A team that gets a win earns 3 points, a tie will get 1 point, and a team with a loss gets 0 points. After all qualifiers are played in the zone, an amount of allocated knockout spots will be awarded to the team with the most points. All qualifier matches are played by home and away and separated from the host country. As the competition improved even further, FIFA decided to add another stage in between these 2 stages. Instead of going straight from the qualifier to knockout stage, they implemented a group stage. The team that qualifies gets randomly drawn and placed into group of 4. This is a round robin setup where each team will play each other once, totaling 3 games. The top 2 teams in each group will then move on to the next knockout stage. The group stage made its debut with 32 teams, but this number is set up to increase to 48 teams in 2026. As time went on, the format of World Cup had to be tweaked around. The next World Cup will be hosted in Qatar in 2022. All 210 nations are currently fighting for the spots in the group stage, showcasing their skill in search of winning the grandest of soccer trophies for their country. I challenge you to support a country and watch the passion in which these team plays. But no matter who you root for, be ready to watch the best of best square off on the field for best beautiful 90-minute of soccer game. Thank you.
Thank you, Aiden. I know we talked over, I think it was the last meeting or a couple meetings ago about soccer. So it's good to see another soccer fan here. Hello. So thank you again. After Aiden, we have Jennifer Kim. So Jennifer, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
There are 7 billion people who inhabit this earth. So what makes you or me so special? I'm only the daughter of a nail salon owner. So what good does my word do in a world filled with doctors, politicians, lawyers, people whose words seem so much more valid than my own? Heck, I probably know 5 other Jennifer Kims who are more successful than I am right now. This thought always lingered in the back of my mind, especially when I was applying to college a few months ago. I couldn't help but think, what have I done the last 18 years of my life? What can I show to these colleges that will make me look cool? That was a dilemma I had as I was brainstorming for my college essays. With a little bit of pondering and some procrastination, I soon realized one thing as I was writing these essays. It is more about the experiences that we go through as a person that makes us as people more valid or, I guess, special. It doesn't really matter how big or small this experience is either. You don't necessarily have to discover the cure to cancer. You don't have to save the world. As long as this event is significant to you, no matter how small it may be, it makes you special than anyone else. When I was in the 4th grade, I was constantly at my mom's nail salon every day after school. It was to the point where it could have been my second home. I was friendly with the ajumas who worked there. I would gossip some elementary school drama with the old ladies who came in to do manicures. I would get free pizza from down the street every time I went to say hello to the cashier who worked there. Of course, it wasn't always sunshines and rainbows. My mom would often assign me tedious tasks to do around the salon to help out and to keep me occupied. I could be folding towels in the back room, color coordinating the nail polishes, or ushering a customer to their seat. At the time, I dreaded doing these tasks with a passion, and I'm sure any other sane elementary schooler would have. But growing up in my mom's nail salon meant that I would often watch my mom in action. I would see the parts of her that I wouldn't normally see at home. I noticed how hard she worked all day and how she would always have a smile on her face despite how difficult things may be. Now that I think about it, it was probably the reason why I would try and mimic her skills and be constantly painting my own nails when I had the time. She was my biggest role model, and that was something I became more aware of and appreciative of as I matured and grew up. My experiences growing up in my mom's nail salon taught me how to work hard and appreciate myself and my family. As my mom would say, behind every successful person is themselves. Your experiences and what you do and what you learn from these experiences make you who you are. It is important to make sure that no one else validates that. Yes, there may be 7 billion people living on this world, but rather than fixating on others, live from your own perspective and do the best that you can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I love how you shared your experience growing up as the child of immigrants and, seeing how hard our parents work to provide for us and how we can get a lot of inspiration from them. So thank you so much for sharing. After Jennifer, we have Rebecca. And then after Rebecca will be Matthew. And then we will go for a break and the judges will deliberate. So with that said, Rebecca, whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer.
Okay. Imagine being in school and walking down the hallways and you see other students using e-cigarettes. What do? Do you walk in another direction, walk past the students, or do you tell them not to vape? Most people will either avoid or walk past the students. But have you ever had that thought about what e-cigarettes can do to your body and that e-cigarettes are proven to be worse than cigarettes? First, e-cigarettes are more addictive because they contain more nicotine and flavoring. The nicotine in the e-cigarette can raise your blood pressure, which spikes your adrenaline which can increase your heartbeat and can lead to a heart attack. One jewel pod contains as much as nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. E-cigarettes are so addicting to the point where California has made a law that e-cigarettes can be only used in areas where smoking is allowed. Second, e-cigarettes can also cause lots of health problems. It can damage the lungs, weaken the immune system, and delay brain development in fetuses, children, and teenagers. When people vape, they inhale a mist of dangerous chemicals that goes into the lungs and can damage both upper and lower parts of the lungs. Vaping can lead to asthma, allergic reactions, lung injury, and eventually death. There are also dangerous chemicals in e-cigarettes, such as diacetyl, cancer-causing chemicals, tin, lead, mercury, nickel, chromium, and cadmium. These chemicals that are inhaled give germs a protective layer so that the normal immune system can kill the germs. Studies have shown that people who use vapes turn to cigarettes thinking that it is safer, but it is just an act of inhaling aerosol that is made up of small particles that get into the lungs, and that there's no difference than smoking a cigarette. Even though e-cigarettes are worse than cigarettes, there are some ways that cigarettes appear to be more harmful than e-cigarettes. For example, cigarettes contain at least 7,000 chemicals, while e-cigarettes contain much less. At least 480,000 people die from smoking, while there are only 27 deaths from e-cigarettes. There are more long-term effects of smoking than vaping, such as blockages in the veins and arteries, increase of asthma attacks, increase of the risk of getting a stroke, increased inflammation in any part of the body can damage the lungs, weaken the immune system. Smoking can also cause Berger's disease, gum and teeth loss, heart disease and stroke, and vision loss. Lastly, there are many unknown factors of e-cigarettes, such as the long-term effects. The factors that are known are the chemicals inside the vapor, but there could be more chemicals and long-term effects that haven't been discovered yet. The purpose of talking about this topic is that the percentage of people using e-cigarettes are increasing, and that people should be aware of the effect and what is contained inside an e-cigarette and how it is no different from a cigarette. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk about such an important topic, and give us all the reminder that vaping, smoking, you can make up all the reasons why one is better or worse than the other, but at the end of the day, you are putting harmful chemicals in your body, right? So thank you again, Rebecca. After Rebecca, we have Matthew Park. So Matthew, whenever you're ready, we will start the timer.
Have you ever heard of the phrase money talks? I know when I heard the phrase, I got a brilliant idea. Maybe I could just pay off the judges, give each one of them $100 to $200 each. I told myself I'm an actual genius. So that's what I did. I PayPal'd each one of them, leaving them a note saying, give me full marks. It's a good idea, no? I'm not a good public speaker. Maybe I could get somewhere along the lines of second to last place. I mean, after all, there's someone has to be worse than me. Now the judges know better than anyone that they didn't actually get any money. For one, I'm broke, and two, it's a foul practice. But I didn't always think like that. When I was a kid, and I mean a kid, not a stupid 16-year-old, I always thought how much money it would take to turn that 10% failing grade I got on my test into 100. $10 maybe? After all, 10 times 10 is 100. $100, 1,000? Who knows? Now, being 8, I obviously wasn't that big and serious about this fall practice, but don't let that fool you. Other people are. Imagine this. Well, some of you may not have to imagine, but after you take the SAT, you may be like, damn, I bombed this test. Or you may be studying for the SAT and you're like, damn, I'm gonna bomb this test. Now, think about the money talks phrase and apply it to the SATs. You may think, now that's BS, but it really isn't. A federal operation dubbed Operation Varsity Blues showed how far parents are willing to go for their good SAT scores. So look at it like this. You may think your parents are hardcore for having you study all day long, but you know what's even more hardcore? Bribing the proctors to change kids' answers. Now that's what I call hardcore and illegal, so don't get any ideas. Let's say you're the kind of person that's like SAT, ACT, amateurs. I'm at that stage of college debt. But did you know that federal government is lobbied by companies such as Nelnet and Navient just to keep anything from being done about that college debt? Well, why is that? Why can't the government give me money for an education or give it to me for free? Well, that's a good question, Jimmy. And one answer to that is that the federal government makes money off defaulted loans, an estimated 66 billion from 2007 to 2012. So while the government's going stonks and your money is flowing into someone's pockets, you're sitting in your dorm room eating cup noodles with 30K in debt. Am I going to do the same thing? Probably. Now, whether you're a suffering junior taking the SATs or a college student suffering with debt, we're all US citizens. And in that regard, our lives are affected by the policymakers, which are also susceptible to this foul practice. Now, you may think, impossible. The government is obviously looking out for my best interests as an American citizen, right? Well, let's look at it this way. US politicians can have their companies financed by industries such as big oil, big pharma, big whatever, and in turn support and pass policies that support these industries for their own benefit. It's like scratching each other's backs. Our public education system has money flying all over the place, and yet it doesn't always effectively cover the student's education. And good God, have you seen public school lunches? So while public school kids are sitting there eating stale pizza, the money meant for their education and improvement flows into the pockets of rich board members. Our prisons, private prisons, are kept open and funded by corrupt public officials and politicians in the United States with little to no care for their prisoners, just to save costs. So while you're eating stale pizzas, believe me, they're not all that bad, because I think in prison, you don't even get pizzas. So be thankful and don't do drugs, kids. For our New Yorkers, the NYPD has had over 12,000 cases regarding their misconduct, corrupt practices, costing the taxpayers $68 million. Boys and girls of KAYF, I speak to you about the issue of corruption. No matter what poison you pick, whether that be bribery, extortion, or embezzlement, we're all affected by corruption and will continue to be to this day. To be frank, we've been bamboozled by the money, and instead of sticking our heads in the sand, we should rather pull out the snake that is corruption and eradicate it throughout our system and throughout our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I gotta say, I could feel your anger and frustration at all these powers that be that, really serve each other and not so much, the benefit and the well-being of the people. So thank you so much. With that, we are going to have our first break. Let's reconvene at 7:00 p.m., so 8 minutes. And judges, I will open the breakout room right now. So make sure you're back here by 7:00 Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you in a bit. Thanks. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Up next, we have Ellen Ko, Juwon Yoon, and then Joshua Lee presenting. Is Ellen here? I saw her.
I'm here.
Great. So let me just open up my phone. Give me a minute. Oops. Okay. So Ellen, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Hi, I'm Ellen Ko. I'm a Korean American, the youngest of four, a freshman, a field hockey player, and a reader. I love to read. As the youngest in my family, I always found myself bored when my siblings were out of the house or when I had to attend their events. In order to alleviate my boredom, I started to read. For every science Olympiad, fencing meet, or KYF meeting, I was reading. I loved every book and every world, but mostly I loved every strong female character I came across. I found myself looking up to Katniss Everdeen, Jo March, Hermione Granger, and Elizabeth Bennet. These women were all I wanted to be and all my parents taught me to be. They were strong, driven, independent, and above all, accomplished. They were also all white. I like to say that children are like slabs of clay.
yet to be sculpted into something strong and beautiful. But the sculptors of these slabs of clay aren't people with beautiful minds, it's the surrounding media. In the media that surrounded me, I didn't regularly see Asian characters, but if I did, they were stereotypes of exotic beings who were hypersexualized or submissive women who lacked any agency. Obviously, at 9 years old, I didn't realize the harmful stereotypes that were forced upon me. But what I did realize is that I didn't want to be seen as those few Asian characters that I saw. They weren't necessarily strong, independent, driven, nor were they accomplished. Maybe it's the Aquarius in me. Maybe it's the fact that I was the youngest of four and was already held to certain standards. Or maybe it was just the fact that I refused to be overshadowed. Whatever it was, the fact is that I detested the weak Asian characters and thus detested the Asian part of me. I didn't want to be the nerdy, glasses wearing, submissive Asian side character. So this slab of clay began to be sculpted into something strong, yeah, but also something that began to resent the very minerals from which it originated. But this didn't change the fact that my favorite food was 된장찌개 and that 엄마 was my first word. No matter how much I tried to deny it, I was Asian through and through. I could act like the characters I idolized, but I would never be seen as a main character like them. Fiction showcases who we are. Stories are capsules of our hopes, dreams, fears, and goals. But the books I read consisted of white characters, which made it more difficult for me to come to terms with my own identity. White characters are what the media deems as fully developed characters. The lack of Asian peers I had and the lack of Asian characters I read about made me more isolated, and I began to hide the very essence of my being. By including characters from diverse backgrounds, books can become truly representative of the big world of ours and help readers learn more about themselves and others. Reading stories of the true world around us with its diverse mosaic of people, backgrounds, and ideas helps us better deal with that reality. Our country is currently in a place where fundamental American thought can be shifted. The foundations of our media finally have room for some minorities to be truly seen. The same minorities that have been screaming to be heard in a country where they aren't even fully represented in culture. Pushing for this representation, we can change the way children see themselves. People write what they see and what they experience. But when the culture showcases whiteness, the stories of POC in our country often go untold. The media, particularly books, is a vital starting point in forcing the privileged to confront the harsh truth of our current society while also allowing for the marginalized to see themselves represented. Our media is silencing the experiences of millions by portraying heroes as white and minorities as insignificant sidekicks. Until minorities are fully represented, Americans won't be able to see the country in its multicultural, multiracial, beautiful self. Representation means there's more to minorities than just harmful stereotypes. Representation can bring life and beauty to the previously two-dimensional, mundane characters and allow for kids like me to see themselves as beautiful and strong instead of being the side characters that fade into the background. With a fully representative media, slabs of clay will be able to become beautiful and strong sculptures that recognize their own beauty. As Rupi Kaur wrote in her poetry collection, The Sun and Her Flowers, representation is vital. Otherwise, the butterfly surrounded by a group of moths, unable to see itself, will keep trying to become the moth. Representation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I know I've said so many times in our meetings, representation matters, that I start sounding like a broken record, but it's true. It's really important that we're able to see ourselves in the media we consume and the characters, who are supposed to embody, these positive qualities. So thanks for speaking on that. After Ellen, we have Juwon, and then Joshua, and then we have Max Lee. Is Juwon here?
Yeah.
Great. So Juwon, whenever you're ready, we will start the timer.
Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, esteemed guests, and honorable judges. Before I start, I would like to warn everyone that I will be using triggering words like quote-unquote rape and more, so please be aware of that going forward. Pornhub is one of the largest adult pornographic content providers online, garnering at least 150 million visits per day. However, the site owned by MindGeek has recently pulled content uploaded by unverified users from its platform after an investigation launched by the New York Times. As of now, petitions to shut down Pornhub from organizations like Not Your Porn have been trending after the site was accused of enabling and profiting from the sex trafficking and rape of women and children. In 192 countries, the petitions to have gained more than 1 million signatures, with mine included. Despite numerous attempts in the past, the case that finally drew attention to the repulsive site was when the New York Times columnist Nicholas Kristof exposed Pornhub for using unconscious women and children for sex. He also explained that on there was a special feature where downloading videos directly from the site was available, allowing others to download and spread videos onto others' social media sources, even if the video was taken down from Pornhub. An anonymous victim had also shared their story, recalling back to when a video of them having underage sex was leaked onto the site without their consent. They pleaded to have their videos taken down for several weeks, but once the videos were, it kept popping back up, and eventually it made it onto the top 5 trending videos into the UK. In another case, Rose Kalimba, another victim, was raped at the age of 14. Unfortunately, her rapist had filmed the incident, and Rose was forced to face her trauma once again after finding out that her full name appeared as a suggested search term on Pornhub. Sadly, there are way more victims whose videos were either posted or leaked without their consent onto the site. Whether if it was just for revenge porn or for their sick pleasure, men, women, and children of any race or ethnicity have all fallen victim of having their bodies being exploited. And worst of all, Pornhub has made no attempt to change its policies. In the 14 years that the site has been up on the internet, people, mostly women and teens, have begged the company to take their videos down, and the site has done nothing until now. And what was the reason for this change? Well, after Kristof's article in the New York Times was published, Visa and MasterCard had launched their investigation for their partnership with Pornhub last week. It was reported that 80% of their videos on Pornhub had been taken down, and they finally decided to disable the download feature. The website also took down content uploaded by unverified users, taking the number of videos on the website from 13.5 million videos down to 2.9 million, which means that a total of 10.6 million videos were taken down. Pornhub has also stated that going forward, content creators must become verified using Pornhub's process that involves uploading a picture of themselves and their username. However, are all these changes good enough to help the website become a safer place for adult entertainment? Well, the answer to that question is no. The fact that Pornhub decided to make these changes only after the public outrage makes it very clear where its morals lie. Of course, as a business, its main motive must be to earn a profit, but turning a blind eye to the suffering victims is just unacceptable. 80% of its library was erased, meaning that 80% of its content was unconsented. Additionally, there is no guarantee that the videos taken down are permanently deleted. Even if the people in the videos were performing the sexual activities willingly, they never consented to have their videos spread onto different platforms. There are also many of those who argue that there are sex workers who depend on Pornhub to make their livings. And I agree, sex workers are important and do not deserve to be discriminated. However, as I said before, Pornhub has made most of its profit from unconsented porn filled with child abuse, rape, weird fetishes, and much more. Workers who legally work for Pornhub are also exploited and are not treated fairly, and there are many cases where they are pressured to perform acts that they do not want to. There are tons of companies in the adult industry that release ethical videos that do not exploit their workers, like OnlyFans or Ballista. After taking everything into account, Pornhub manifests and promotes harmful and unethical practices in the adult entertainment industry, and should therefore be banned before any more harm could be done. And to those who call us, people who want to keep others safe, quote-unquote prudes or boring, do you believe that watching people having sex for your own pleasure is more important than those who are traumatized after having their privacy violated? Imagine if it was your brother, sister, friend, or any other family member that was a victim. Would you still feel the same way about the site? Pornhub is a website that capitalizes off of underage sex without any regulatory body or government holding them to account. Using children does not faze them just as long as it will earn them some profit. So as I conclude my speech, please think about the issue at hand. What's more important, a person's life or your entertainment? Thank you.
Thank you, Chuan. Yeah, it's certainly a very provocative topic for sure, but I'm glad that you took the time today to speak about this. You know, there are just too many victims of revenge porn and these kinds of online sex crimes. And we do need to make sure that these platforms are held accountable. So thank you again, Juwon. After Juwon, we have Joshua Lee and Maximus Lee. I think Joshua's here. Is Max here? Okay. So we'll have Joshua, and then after him, we have Olivia. Is Olivia here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. So Joshua, whenever you're ready, we'll get started. I guess Josh is, maybe he's away from his keyboard. Let me just mark that down so I can make sure he presents later. Okay, so Olivia, are you ready to present now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So whenever you're ready.
Okay. I want to talk about the effect media has on racial perception, beyond the effect on an Asian American individual, but what happens to them in a population. Even beyond just underrepresentation, there is constant misrepresentation of Asian Americans and the tragic effects that follow. Media has almost come to define communities, especially in these past years with COVID-19 and activism towards racial equality. And though the methods of spreading that information has been through the internet, it's worth mentioning that media is not just TV shows or what you see on social media platforms. It's the network of all communication in a community, every public project, every conversation, every word spoken from one person to another through the internet or just word of mouth. That is media. It's the air that surrounds us as we live in society. It's the air that we breathe, and that air is so thin here. It constantly carries racism, and any bit of fresh air, any bit of true representation that we can get, we appreciate it, even though it's not enough. As Asian Americans, we've come to be characterized as more or less silent and submissive, but hard workers. And we're expected to work hard and endure even in response to racism, and people push that through media, and there are levels to it. I guess a big example would be there are politicians claiming that immigrants are monopolizing the economy or that East Asians are carrying and spreading coronavirus. And those words carry so much weight, yes, because it's coming from the former president, and also because it just keeps going. It reaches every aspect of society. There is systematic racism. We repeat it, we're frustrated, but it takes longer for us each time to feel it because we've been breathing that air for so long. It might not hit us, let alone people that aren't Asian who should help. Racist content in media is so normalized, it's just another day when it's coming from a world leader. Now it takes a mass shooting to bring attention to the problem with Asian hate crime, which had an almost 300% growth since last year. And several other hate crimes are unreported or denied as being racially motivated, even though it's so clear. This is slow desensitization. We are too used to it. We can't pretend it doesn't happen, but we can't prepare ourselves by accepting it. So the situation is we're stuck where the air is getting thinner, but if we learn to breathe through it, we risk ourselves eventually forgetting that it's not okay for us and our future generations. There are so many awareness efforts because information and news is most important to activism, but that's the hidden tragic power of media. It slowly suffocates us so that even if awareness reaches its peak, even though we use the media to spread information and eventually everybody is educated about racism in the world, it might not even matter because it won't get a reaction out of everybody. We're so used to it. Well, according to Eastern philosophy that we all might live by, individual persistence in the face of injustice is honorable. But that, I think, has been so overly interpreted to mean ignore racism, keep your head down, and endure it. And people end up spending their whole lives like that. Some keep quiet because they don't want to cause trouble, others because they don't want to take away attention from racism of other ethnic groups, and for most, it's because their anger died a long time ago. So I can't tell you how to breathe properly through all this, how to forgive yourself for not being able to do more, how to navigate racism without drowning, without losing perspective, how to determine what is worth talking about in such a short time. But I don't think we're meant to, I just think we're not meant to give up. I believe that individual efforts and persistence shouldn't be found in silence. It should be found in activism. And I know that it comes in unsynchronized waves, usually in response to yet another homicide, with no guarantee that it'll solve anything, or not everything at least. But doing so anyways, I believe that is real virtue. I bet one of these days, those people will be enough, whether they'll be scattered throughout history or come in a synchronized movement, and it'll be enough for a permanent change. And I hope that day comes soon, and I hope that you'll be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. And thanks again for talking about what happened this past week. It's not easy to talk about it because it's just so traumatic and so easy to see ourselves in these victims of all these incidents. But I'm really glad that you spoke about it, and we don't need to suffer in silence, in the face of injustice. So I really love that. Thank you. After Olivia, we have Natalie Pack. Is Natalie here?
I'm here.
Hi, Natalie. And after Natalie, we will also have Maxwell Yu. I don't think, no, Max isn't here. Okay, so we have Natalie and then Hope Kim. Is Hope here?
I'm here.
Great. So with that said, Natalie, whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer.
Hi, my name is Natalie Pack, and I'm going to talk about making decisions. First off, I even had a difficult time choosing my topic for this very speech competition. I probably spent over a week thinking of my topic, and it's finally come to this, decision making. When I think about it, I'm not too sure why it took the time it did, but it just did. Was I worried about something? Was I anxious of making a fool out of myself? In all honesty, yes I was. I was terrified. Talking just isn't my thing, and I've never been good at it anyways. I'm just that kid that likes to stay in the back and observe my surroundings. Well, going back to decision making, I've always had difficulty with choosing anything, whether it was something simple as the ice cream flavor I was going to get. Well, actually, ice cream flavors are a big deal. Or the song I was going to listen to, or just the electives I was going to take for the upcoming year. I wonder, why do I take so long to make decisions? Well, after pondering, it has great correlation with my worry of letting people down, with what people would think about me. So basically, I have low self-esteem. I carry so much worry, it keeps me up at night. I can wake up at 4 a.m. and just think about something trivial, like the color I would be getting for the rubber bands of my braces the next appointment. After the braces, when I finally got the brace, well, now I have my braces over, but when I did get them off, the first thing I thought of was one less thing to worry about, unlike the normal response of being happy they got their braces off. Or even like the ice cream flavors. There were so many unique flavors to choose from, but at the end, I would always default to strawberry. For my electives, I didn't even choose them. My mom sort of did, and now I'm in a science research class that I absolutely hate. The immense amount of times I've been told to follow my gut have not really affected me in any ways. As you can clearly see, decisions just refuse to be made. The very times I have made decisions for myself, I can see the various reactions I have towards them. Joy, sadness, or just absolute regret. I continue to beat myself over it and just add more stress. To find answers, here's what Google told me. Don't let stress get to the best of you. 2, give yourself some time. 3, keep a diary. 4, think about your goals and values. And 5, the obvious answer, even when I expected, follow your gut. After reading these, I realized I did everything to prevent me from making decisions. I stress over everything. I push everything off to the side. I definitely don't have a diary and have never truly thought about my life goals. And my gut, no, I'd rather not have my stomach make decisions for me, if that's what that even means. So, if you couldn't tell, I dread decision making, but in some ways, you can say I'm adventurous or reckless. I sit on the sides of mountain cliffs, making both my mom and poor brother worry about me, or would love to go skydiving or bungee jumping. I envy those that have found voices for themselves and wish I could have even a fourth of their confidence. Now I realize I just need to go for it. Great advice, almost like the go with your gut kind of vibe. But when you think about it, it is kind of good advice because no one's going to make a decision for you later in life. And sometimes life's just going to go the way it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie. Are you by any chance a Libra?
I'm a Scorpio.
You're a Scorpio, okay. Because, the indecisiveness, that's such a, I mean, I'm a Libra and I totally relate, but maybe it's not so much about our zodiac signs. But thanks again for sharing and for your vulnerability. Really appreciate it. After Natalie, we have Hope. And after Hope, we have Andrew Park. Is Andrew Park here? I think I saw his name. Oh yeah, he's here. Okay, well, Hope, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, one second. Okay. Good evening. Today I'm going to talk about, sorry, did my light? Oh, sorry, never mind. Good evening. Today I'm going to talk about Yu Gun-soon. Yu Gun-soon was a young patriot who protested against Japanese colonial rule. When she was just 16 years old, Yu and her father organized a peaceful protest in their hometown, but the Japanese military police stepped in by opening fire on the crowd, killing 19 people, including Yu's parents. Yu was captured and incarcerated, but still continued to oppose the Japanese government in prison. Eventually transferred to an underground cell, she was brutally tortured and beaten, and at 17 years old, she died of malnutrition and injuries. Yu Gun-soon's sacrifice during the March 1st movement symbolizes Korea's unyielding persistence to fight against the tyrannical Japanese colonial rule. As history continues to repeat itself, Yu's actions remind us of the necessity to still defend ourselves against corrupt authority figures. Recently, the Black Lives Matter protests have taken the world by storm. Although this movement was a result of a divided nation instead of a conflict between two, the fight for freedoms against those in power ensues. Within America, prejudice still remains, even after decades of the battle for equality. Police brutality towards African Americans on a large scale has forced Americans to realize that systemic racism still exists and will not go away unless the nation unites to dismantle it. The Black Lives Matter movement exemplified resistance to unjust authority figures. Numerous non-African American groups and organizations actively engaged themselves to support this fight together. Ironically, while these protests made major progress in preventing prejudice for African Americans, a new kind of prejudice emerged within the country. As the coronavirus began its spread during the movement, Asian Americans were victimized as the cause of this horrible pandemic. And I think we can all attest to the rude side glances when we're in public or the fear of sneezing so that we don't get those glances. Even former President Trump chose harmful words such as Kung Flu virus and blamed China for the pandemic, encouraging racist remarks and actions towards Asian Americans. At first, I was furious to see a healing nation once again fall back to her racist roots. However, I now understand that even though it will take time, we must continue our efforts to raise awareness for Asian Americans in order to allow America to grow. The Black Lives Matter movement is obviously necessary in raising awareness to the racism that African Americans face every day. As this movement continues, we must also recognize the need to branch out the same support to other communities who face similar obstacles. Even though it is a common notion that Asian Americans face no struggles of racism, we're continuously stereotyped as nerdy, passive, and unsanitary. But after the recent inexcusable and horrible hate crimes targeted towards Asian Americans, the US is beginning to see that we need help too. As an Asian American, and more specifically a Korean American, I find it important to advocate for rights in a country that is quick to judge others because of their race. As a nation, we need to rid ourselves of all prejudices and accept one another so that we can truly become a united community. Youth patriotism is still alive even in Korean American females like myself who live outside our mother nation. Even though Yu Guan-sun did not single-handedly end the Japanese colonial rule, her spirit and passion sparked further motivation and determination in her fellow Korean protesters to continue the fight for independence, which they were ultimately able to accomplish. Her memory and ideals should remind us that there is a need to engage and participate in our communities and to extend this fight for equality. Just like you and her movement, one person like myself may not bring an immediate and drastic change to our community, but as a nation, we must inspire others to defend each other and learn not to compromise to unforgivable acts of inequality. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. Yeah, if you aren't familiar with Yu Guan-sun, I highly recommend you Google about her and the remarkable courage that she had against imperialism in Korea's history. And also, Hope, I love how you connected the civil rights activism we're seeing here with this part of Korea's history. I think that's a very compelling comparison that you've made. So once again, thank you. After Hope, we have Andrew Park. I know Andrew's here. We also have Isang. Let me check if they're here. I don't think Isang's here today. Then after Andrew will be Richard. Is Richard here? Richard Young?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Andrew, are you ready to present now?
Yeah.
Great. So whenever you're ready.
Online school, dropping grades, and teacher-student relationships restricted to screens. Can anyone relate? With many students being new to online school, our recent education system has become exceedingly difficult for students to keep up with. In just a span of 1 year, we have seen a significant increase in lack of motivation and purpose. What's the cause for all of this? COVID-19. Today, I'll be addressing 3 significant ways in which the changing education system has negatively impacted students. The first issue I'll be addressing is mental health. Since the online school curriculum has taken over a majority of schools, students have been spending most of their days in front of a computer screen, listening to lectures for hours straight with no personal interactions. This alone has led to decreasing motivation and increasing depression. As one of many examples, the New York Times states, in the Clark County, Nevada School District, 18 students took their lives during the 9 months of school closure, which is double the number of students who committed suicide in the district in all of 2019. With mental health declining day to day, how can we as students work with our parents and teachers to make sure we are not becoming a victim of this pandemic? Simple. A, teachers can strive to make classes more interactive with student participation, such as allowing students to answer questions or respond in class. B, parents can continue to help with making efforts to be more understanding and compassionate towards their children, as well as making virtual classes as technologically seamless as being in person in school. And C, students can attempt to form online or in-person study groups with their peers. In my own experience, I have been able to study better in groups than on my own, and study groups have allowed me to excel in my learning. It is important to not only find ways to make our studies more manageable, but also to ensure we have a strong support system. Keeping each other motivated and being able to empathize with one another during this stressful time is crucial. Another issue is academic integrity. A rapid review article by Crystal Turner and Elaine Eaton explains that there have been piled up amounts of anxiety and stress from the new online system, leading to abuse of it during the pandemic. Cheating, which has become as easy as copying and pasting into Google, has become the new trend. More so, students are more prone to sleeping during lectures or being distracted during classes, since they could just look up answers during the test. So, what do these factors imply? They imply that there's less learning going on with the new system. Academic integrity changing from COVID-19 does not have a positive impact, and actions must be taken against it. Some ways which have been scientifically proven to improve academic integrity are as follows. A, students can take tests and quizzes while in an online call so teachers can proctor. B, tests can be taken on secured sites and apps such as Cloudboard's lockdown browser. Or C, tests can be original with new questions year to year and not recycled from previous years in order to prevent students from looking up questions. This is in order to counter the many online sites where students could find previous year test questions. Third, another point that has been crucially affected by COVID-19 on the school system is relationships and socials. And no, not the personal kinds, the academic kinds. With schools being mostly online, students aren't able to create bonds with their teachers as they have been able to in previous years. In my personal experience, I have been distant from my teachers during online learning compared to when I was in person, pre-COVID-19. Without physically seeing each other, the bond couldn't be fully created, leaving online students, such as myself, at a clear disadvantage for teacher recommendations as well as teacher-student relationships. Another way that COVID-19 has affected socials and relationships is by removing the opportunity for students to partake in extracurricular classes, courses, and activities. For example, according to Commercial Appeal, Shelby County School students who choose virtual learning for the new school year will not be able to participate in in-person extracurricular activities, the district said. This obstacle prevents students from being able to create student-to-student bonds in sports or clubs. One psychologist states that it is crucially important that teenagers have regular contact with their peers as well as their teachers, coaches, and advisors. Although this obstacle doesn't appear in all schools, there have been a majority, including the district just across from my own, which have reported doing so. With the pandemic occurring, people must find a way to balance both their safety and their education, a nearly impossible task. Why, you might ask, is this still a problem if a COVID-19 vaccine has come out now? Well, in the past year of online learning, education systems have had trouble keeping students in check. Some may even argue that the end of 2020 school year and most of 2021 school year should be canceled and not count towards grade reports. Students are often held to a standard of which they are expected to keep up, but that's not sufficient enough. In this all too familiar world of virtual school, steps must be taken against problems which has cost lives, compromised education, and inhibited much needed social interaction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrew. I know we can all relate to this new system of online learning, and I really appreciated the bullet points of solutions to the shortcomings of such a platform. So again, thank you so much. Next, we have Richard Yum, and after Richard, we will have Tyne, Anna, who's going to present, and then after Tyne will be Sean Kim. Is Tyne here?
Yeah.
Great. And what about Sean? Is Sean here?
Yeah.
Excellent. So Richard, whenever you're ready, we will start the timer.
Procrastination. Procrastination is the action of stalling the completion of a task. An abundant amount of people suffer from procrastination, including me. Why complete work when an exciting game is yearning to be played? I'm sure I'm not the only one that has watched at least one video on overcoming procrastination. Whether it be the Pomodoro technique, scientific articles, or simply good music to listen to, procrastination is a hurdle most seek to pass, yet ultimately fail to overcome. A major cause of procrastination is boredom. People need entertainment to survive. Extreme boredom could cause apathy and fatigue. Nobody wants to sit down for hours, working or studying without end. Thus, breaks are essential. Breaks optimize efficiency, allowing for a good workflow. Earlier, I mentioned the Pomodoro technique, a time management method that utilizes short breaks. However, how could you possibly take a 5-minute break and immediately get back to work? This requires major discipline, something I'm not capable of. In response, I have encountered an alternative called the Animadoro technique. Commit a 40 to 60 minute time frame to work and then watch an entire episode of anime or TV show, rewarding yourself. The hardest part of this technique is not watching the next episode, especially after being left on a cliffhanger. However, stopping yourself from pressing the watch next play button and instead resuming your workflow will motivate you to finish your work to watch the next episode. Listening to music is another alternative. Some people listen to classical music, lo-fi beats, or other dedicated study playlists. These options may work, but a suggestion is to listen to binaural beats. This type of music emits a relaxing yet focus-oriented energy. Personally, this has allowed me to get work done very unexpectedly. Stalling work seems easy to do. I could do this later in the evening. I'm sure I'll finish. When under pressure to submit an assignment, you may work better, ceasing to drift off, completely focused on reaching that finish line. However, at that point, you are always under pressure, losing sleep, constantly stressed, wishing you did that work sooner, yet failing to change. Whether or not these words motivate you, try these suggestions and see where it takes you. Have I conquered procrastination? Absolutely not. Are there ways to overcome it? Certainly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Richard. I'm sure we can all relate to the trap that is procrastination. So thanks for speaking on it. I hope everybody else is during this pandemic, we're all trying to be as productive as possible and not getting tempted to hit the next episode button when we're taking these breaks. So thank you once again, Richard. After Richard, we got Pine. So whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Hi, I'm Anna, and today I'm going to be talking about the Taekyeonjo, the last princess of Korea. On January 26, 1962, a woman showed up in the interest and welcome of countless many people. But it was as if she had a body without conciseness, expression, and she did not have a single word. She was a 50-year-old woman who was forced to be sent to Japan and was finally able to return back to her homeland after 38 years of waiting. The lady was the unlucky Princess Toke. There is a legend in Korea that says a child that is born the 60th year of their parents look exactly like them. Like the legend, a baby girl who was born in 1912, the year that Kojong turned 60, looked exactly like her father. Although she was a Sonya, a daughter that was born between the emperor and his second wife, she was a precious and the only daughter for Kojong, who had lost all of his daughters due to illnesses. She was the youngest in the kindergarten, but she was a quiet, elegant, and intelligent out of everyone in her kindergarten class. Princess Toke grabbed everyone's attention wherever she went because she was a child who was smart and had a lot of talent. But with the sudden death of her father Kojong, her life changed entirely. The imperial family must be educated in Japan. This was a statement made by the Japanese in 1925, wanting to make Joseon's royal family into Japanese. The Japanese imperial forcefully brought their child Toke to Japan. There was a feeling of despair in Ongju's face. I couldn't find the bright and intelligent eyes that fascinated me when I first saw her for the first time, said the memoir of the Queen Yongchin, also known as Ibangja, the past years. She was forced to be apart from her mother at a young age, and she was forced to be sent to a different country, having no one by her side. But, she always carried a separate bottle of water because she was afraid of being poisoned. Her brother Sun Jung died to poison, and she believed that her father died because of the Japanese poison does him as well. Staying with silence and with no expression, she resisted the coercion of Japanese imperialism. When she was 17 years old, her mother died. Then she started to struggle mentally. After her mother passed away, she didn't go to school, ate or drank. All she had done was just being stuck in her room, and at night she struggled with insomnia. Oftentimes, during the midnight, she ran outside and started walking around. Worrying about Toke, Queen Yongchin asked the psychiatrist to visit her and take a look on her. The psychiatrist told Queen Yongchin that Toke was struggling with dementia precox. In addition, in a mentally difficult situation, the Japanese imperial forced Toke to marry a Japanese count when she was 19. It seemed like she was recovering from her illness, but 6 months in after her marriage, it occurred again. While continuing a poor marriage without having a proper conciseness, she heard the news of her country's liberation. Then that year, she divorced her husband. Her husband took care of her for 25 years, but due to liberation Korea, he didn't have enough money to take care of her. The following year of liberation, her daughter Chang'e disappeared and later was found dead. It was later known that she had committed suicide. Then Toke was sent to a mental hospital where she spent about 15 years of her life. While suffering from illness, the government's opposition about Toke going back to Korea started to increase. And in 1962, when she turned 50, she was finally able to step on her homeland. But instead of staying at her house, she had to stay at a hospital because she was still suffering from her mental disorder. Then at the age of 56, Toke was finally able to return back to Cheongdeokgung Naksunje, where she spent the rest of her life with her brother Ian, the last emperor, and his wife Ibangja, the last queen of Korea. Then 21 years later, on April 21st, 1989, not being able to recover from her illness, Taekyeonjo passed away. Following her, 9 days later, the last queen of Korea, Ibangja, passed away as well. When Toke wasn't struggling with her mental illness, she wrote, "I want to live at Naksunje for a long time. Father, mother, I miss you. 대한민국, our country." Unfortunately, a lot of Koreans are not aware of the last Princess Toke. I believe that it is very important for us to remember and learn about her and her family's devastating life during the Japanese imperialism, because there is no future for people who have forgotten their history. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, I myself am a Korean studies major in school, but I have to admit that I didn't really know about Princess Takhe, so I really appreciated that you chose to speak about her life and give us the reminder that we should not forget, these important figures in our history as Korean people. So thank you again, Anna. Next, we have Sean Kim, and then after Sean, we will take a break and the judges will deliberate. So Sean, whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer.
Okay. School is fun. Wow, what a weird phrase to say. I've noticed that throughout my years in school, from preschool to today, the phrase school is fun has become a lot less frequent. While school may have been a fun, helpful environment for learning at one time, for a lot of students, this is no longer the case. Not only does the American education system make school not enjoyable, but it also doesn't do the best job at teaching kids. Here's why the current school system is outdated and needs to change. While there are countless reasons why this is the case, today I'll be focusing on just two: an outdated system and the content taught. Do you know why public education was even formed in the first place? The system was put into place around the 1800s, which was around when the industrial age was, mainly to prepare people to work in factories. School was a perfect device to mold people into docile and obedient workers who did everything they were told, which would be the same things expected of them in factories. However, hundreds of years later, the school system still promotes many of the same values that it used to. Discipline, order, and obedience are tightly integrated into the system, while those like collaboration, creativity, and curiosity are harshly suppressed. Every need or request is highly controlled and monitored, and most of our worth is judged depending on how good we are at following directions. But in the modern age, rather than simply being good at following directions, qualities such as innovation and creativity are essential skills to have to succeed. However, the system is still stuck in those industrial ages, still promoting these same outdated concepts and skills. The entire structure of school, the traditional idea of learning that has remained unchanged for so long, is overdue for renovations. While the rest of society is progressing, our school system is still stuck in the past. Another reason why the school system is outdated is due to the amount of irrelevant content that is taught. In school, have you ever wondered, when will I ever use this information in real life? I know I do every day. Well, I think one of the main purposes of school is to help prepare you for the future. But if we're often questioning the usefulness of the various things taught in class, is school really doing its job? Schools spend so much time on topics such as mathematical theorems or the genetic makeup of a leaf, which will be useless to most students throughout their lives. They completely ignore important life skills such as personal finance, current laws, or managing your mental health. Instead of teaching valuable information that is guaranteed to be of use to every student, why are we so focused on facts students will end up forgetting 2 weeks after their test? The subjects taught in school should start to pivot from the standard curriculum and start to include more relevant and useful topics. Another major problem is that schools don't even do a good job of helping us learn the content we have right now. Currently, the school system is memorization focused. They ignore all other types of learning, each of the unique ways different students learn best, and completely forget about cultivating other types of intelligence. All the focus is put solely on how well we can memorize and spit out facts. However, this type of learning is extremely inefficient. Studies have shown that we forget 95% of information learned through memorization in just 3 days. Most students spend hours memorizing information right before the test and end up forgetting most of it the very next day. Due to the importance schools place on getting a good score on the test, we prioritize exam scores over actually learning and retaining the information taught. As a result, students are not able to learn and remember most of the material. There are much better ways to educate than testing students on how good they are at memorizing facts. And the school system should transfer to methods for authentic learning, to ways students can learn, remember, and understand useful and relevant information. But I'm not here to blame the teachers and principals around the country. There are a lot of passionate educators who genuinely try their best to help us out. This is a problem that needs to be addressed on a much larger scale at the state or even national level. We need to have a massive reform in the school system to continue and innovate in one of the most crucial aspects of society, education. To keep up with the rapidly changing 21st century, we need to change our current outdated school system. And so, later on, while you're bored out of your mind sitting in math class, why not think about why school has to be the way it is today? Thank you.
Great, Sean, thank you so much. I love how you talk about this, this idea of being good at following directions makes you a good student, when maybe we should be considering innovation and creativity as values we need to instill in students everywhere. So thank you again, Sean. With that said, let's take a 10-minute break. And judges, I will open the breakout room. So let's rally back in 10 minutes. All right, see ya. All right, welcome back. First, we are going to, the first three presentations we have now are going to be from William Kim, I see you. Yoonsa Lee, is Yoonsa here?
Yes.
Great, and then after Yoonsa, we will have Derek. So with that said, let me grab my timer. Give me 1 second. Okay, so William, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
All right. Do you ever have the issue of having too much money and not knowing where to spend it? Maybe you guys have 100, 150, 300, 500, or even $1,000 laying around. Who knows? Please gather yourself, calm down, and stop worrying, because I'm here to help you. I've taken the time to carefully analyze and probe the world's strongest, fastest, and most efficient search engine that money can buy, also known as Google, for 600 seconds. I've also held a conference with my two most trusted advisors, my mom and my dad. After all of that research, I've come up with perhaps a list of the top 5 things to spend your extra funds on. Firstly, I would open up a savings account and put some funds in there. A high yield savings account can help teach you about financial responsibilities, can help you make some interest, and since we're all teenagers here, we don't have to worry about paying any monthly fees. It's literally free money. The second thing that I would put money in is a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is a retirement account where you can put in after-tax income and collect the interest, which will not be taxed. The only drawback is that there are penalties for taking out money before the age of 59, and you must have a job to open a Roth IRA. The third thing that I would do with the money is invest in the stocks. I think that everyone should at least dip their toes in the stock market, and no matter what happens, it'll be a win-win situation. If you make some money, that's great, and if you lose money, that's also good because you can learn a lot of things from it. Last week, I bought 2 shares of GameStop, and I learned to never trust my friends for financial advice. Another thing that I would invest in are music lessons. I'm pretty sure most of our parents here forced us to play violin or piano or whatever, which might have scarred some of you guys from ever touching an instrument again, which is completely understandable. Personally, I've tried out the trombone, recorder, piano, drums, and guitar, but I ended up dropping all but one. That one instrument was the guitar, and that was the only instrument where I asked my mom for lessons, which she happily obliged. I've only been playing for 2 to 3 years now, but it's definitely one of my favorite hobbies, and it's been giving me lots of motivation and something to set goals for. I truly recommend that no matter what, you try a new instrument of any kind at least one more time. And lastly, and most importantly, besides everything else I mentioned, I would highly, highly recommend donating some of that money to the families of the victims in the Gold Spot shootings. Thank you. And if all else fails, I would also recommend giving that money to me, because I will ensure you, I will give you my word that that money will be put in one of the 5 things that I listed above. Thank you.
Thanks, William. Yeah, I mean, it's really important for us to be financially literate, to start thinking about investing and saving. And you're right, maybe GameStop stock was not the answer here. My brother's been observing the GME price going up and down, so it's a lot going on at the moment. But thanks again for sharing, William. So Yunta, are you ready?
Oh, yes.
Great. So whenever you're ready, we will start the clock.
A friend of mine in Korea actually recovered from COVID-19 last year. One day, she told me that she wanted to write, "I overcame COVID-19" as her epitaph on her headstone. And I was like, that's cool, but why are you thinking about that already? You're only 18. That night, I also began thinking about my epitaph too. I know it's too early to think such a thing like this, but I think it is worth thinking once in a lifetime. The final destination of everyone's life is death. Death is one of the things that everyone faces, fairly regardless of status, occupation, age, or gender. If a person dies, he or she will be buried, and you'll have your headstone erected. There will be your name, date of birth, and the date of death. But what else would you like to write besides just your name and date? Epitaph is an inscription on your headstone that you leave your last message. I know some might think that it's not yet for me to die. It's too early. It's too creepy to think about it. Well, you never know when you're going to die. As it is your last thing that you will be living, many people write fun, touching words on their epitaph. It is not as depressing as it is. For example, someone wrote a famous saying by Benjamin Franklin, which is, "There's nothing as certain as death and taxes in life." Another funny epitaph, Britain's famous commissioner, Spike Milligan, who died in 2002 at the age of 83, wrote, "I told you I was ill." His epitaph was chosen as the favorite epitaph of the British people. Perhaps the most famous epitaph belongs to George Bernard Shaw, a British playwright who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1925. He wrote, "I knew if I had been around long enough, something like this would happen." An epitaph can be something that symbolizes you. Johnny Carson, who was a host of late-night U.S. television talk show for about 30 years, when asked what he would write on his headstone, he said he would write, "I'll be right back," which is a word that he often used to say every show. Another example, a man who died at the age of 102, wrote, "Good people die early," which is interesting because it can be inferred that this person might have thought of himself as a man, not such a good person. Of course, I don't dare to guess the person's life with just a single sentence on their headstone, but I think epitaph is one of the implications of person's life. It also allows us to share a little ourselves and our loved ones with future generations. Some people say that intentionally didn't engrave anything on their headstone, which is usually either a narcissistic act that their achievements are so great that they can't contain them all, or because they don't want to leave anything. Such an epitaph with emotion and humor may not have occurred just before its fate. Thinking about one's epitaph can be looking back on one's life. If I had to think of my last message, I would like to write, "No regrets. I hope to live for a life without regrets, living the best every moment." Maybe the epitaph is a goal of my life that I hope for when I look back on my life later on. So just for once in a life, take a moment to wonder about your epitaph. Maybe your epitaph can be a punchline to those who read your epitaph, or a piece of advice, or a pleasant laugh. Or for your descendants, phrases like "live to the fullest, for life is all too short" will also remain in their hearts. Just as an artist leaves its work, oneself, as an artist that draws one's life, I think it is worth leaving one good epitaph for oneself. Who knows? Your last message can be famously remembered as one of the 21st century's best memorable epitaph in the future. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you so much, Yunta. And what an interesting topic. You know, we don't think about our mortality and our death every day, but it's definitely really interesting to hear all of these, these famous writers and celebrities and the last message they've left in their lives. So thanks for sharing, Yunta. After Yunta, we have Derek. And after Derek, we will have Tina and then Debbie. Tina and Debbie, are you here?
Yep.
All right, Debbie's here, and I think I saw Tina earlier. Great. Okay. So, Derek, whenever you're ready, you can get started.
Boy, here goes. In his 1943 paper, appropriately titled A Theory of Human Motivation, Abraham Maslow proposed a theory that attempts to explain human behavior by categorizing what he believes were the 5 levels that describe human motivation, from basic necessities to self-actualization. The current depiction of his theory is of a pyramid because one must fulfill his or her needs from the bottom up before reaching the top. So let's start at the beginning then. The most basic of human desires begin with essential physical or physiological needs, the standard food, water, air that we need to survive. Obviously, there is no reason to consider your social standing or your confidence if you're starving. For example, communities in third world countries that don't have food or water are unable to pass this stage of Maslow's hierarchy. And even today, these impoverished communities need support in order to release themselves from the vicious cycle of their suffering. Now, the next level of this pyramid includes needs for our safety. These include things like shelter, resources, and employment. When you satisfy your hunger and thirst, you start looking towards things that can help maintain your survival. And yes, in the modern world, these needs include employment or income. However, this level may not be met for most of us, especially with Asian Americans. The treatment toward Asian Americans today is not something that really any of us should feel safe about. Numerous attacks towards both the young and old are something that can scare us. We can never tell when we ourselves could be the victims and may be fearful towards the harm we might receive. Some would call this racism, and others would just call this outright violence. But regardless of labels, tragedies like what happened in the recent Atlanta shooting keeps many Asian Americans fearful and stuck within this second level of Maslow's hierarchy. Now that we understand the more basic needs, we can talk about what others call the psychological needs, what we commonly call self-esteem. The sense of love or belonging is a very crucial part of our mental well-being. The friends and family members that we love are some of our most important confidants in our support network, and though losing these may not affect us physically, the detrimental effects it could have on our mental well-being is much, much more devastating. Many individuals around the world live in dysfunctional families that have largely negative impacts on their mental well-being. This contributes to a vicious generational cycle that unfairly impacts future generations mentally, perpetuating the problems that we can still see today. So the next level of this pyramid is actually sort of similar, highlighting our ego-driven needs. This ranges from simple self-esteem to strong confidence in yourself. So while the desire for respect and reputation in large quantities, as with most things, is wildly unhealthy, a decent amount of both can actually fuel ourselves to become better individuals, always striving towards what we consider to be our ideal selves. But now, speaking of ideal selves, the final level of this pyramid is one that Maslow himself calls self-actualization. Now, self-actualization is not as complicated as it sounds. It simply means that we work towards what we perceive as the ideal versions of ourselves. These ideal versions are largely subjective, but provide us with a goal to work towards if we wish to accomplish everything that we can be. You know, the ideal parent, the ideal student, the ideal person is something that we should strive to reach for in order to fulfill our potential as people. Now, at this point, I'm sure that many people in the audience are like, hey, why are you talking about a random topic that's not like everyone else? Now, to be quite frank, I'm not 100% sure myself. I mostly did this because I thought it was interesting at first, but as I researched more and more, I realized that Maslow's hierarchy of needs could be applied to the modern day, especially with issues like mental health and, of course, the treatment towards Asians in America today. Of course, at our current age, we haven't reached that peak of self-actualization. Even the adults in this meeting still have goals and dreams they strive for. However, it is within our ability to fulfill the lower levels of Maslow's pyramid. But herein lies the issue. For many less fortunate than us, the lower rungs of Maslow's pyramid are unable to be fulfilled for various reasons, from impoverished communities to dysfunctional families to endemic racism within the United States and beyond. These issues hinder the ability of others to reach their goals. But I believe that through a concerted effort, we can shatter these barriers together to fulfill our duty as human beings to help others self-actualize and achieve their ideal selves. Of course, these are lofty goals, and coming from a mere high schooler at that. What I'm saying today may seem foolish and idealistic, but I believe in the human nature, that we are innately good people, and that we are willing to believe in our fellow man for the greater good. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Derek. What an interesting topic. Do you think you could type in the chat the Maslow and the hierarchy of needs, or maybe where people can learn a little bit more about that? Because it sounds super interesting. And I love how you're applying it to all these other things that are going on in the world as well. So thank you again, Derek. Tina,
Are you ready to do your presentation?
Can I go one turn later? So like after the next person, is it possible?
Debbie, would you be comfortable presenting before Tina?
If not, could you wait like a few minutes because I'm just in the bathroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No problem. Debbie, I guess we do have a schedule to maintain, but Debbie, are you able to give your presentation now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much for accommodating. I really appreciate that. So whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer.
Okay. Begin. Okay, good evening, KAYF members. I'm Debbie, and my speech will be about why staying single isn't a bad thing. As you may know, relationships are a great way to bond and build something strong with a certain individual. Either spending time with your family members or having a good friendship with your friends. But some people tend to push pressure onto others when they know you don't have a romantic relationship with a significant partner. From your grandma asking, 남자친구 있어? At the family dinner, or third wheeling between your friends who recently became a couple and they're all lovey-dovey with each other with googly eyes. Some may assume that being single means you're unsociable, unattractive, stubborn, or immature, but there's more to that. Let's say there's a couple who wants to have a nice lunch together. The boyfriend asks, hey, what do you want for lunch today? The girlfriend simply replies, oh, I'm fine with anything. Now the boyfriend may be confused and he says, sandwich? No. Pasta? No. Sushi? No. Then what the heck do you want? I said anything you want. I'm fine with anything. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a poorly done conversation that will lead to problems. And there's only one way to solve this. The boyfriend should not have listed all of those recommendations. Do you guys have an idea what he could have said? I'm assuming you don't, so I'll tell you. He should have said, guess where we're going? Now with that simple question, the girlfriend would excitedly guess, but is actually the place where she originally expected to go. This sounds complicated, right? As you may know, money does not grow on trees, and sadly, money does play a huge factor when dating. Maybe you're making bank because you're on the grind to success, but spending it does hurt your account. From buying gifts on anniversaries, holidays, birthdays, dinners, there is no end to stop these expenses. If your communication is off, things may go downhill. My two friends are actually in a relationship, and the girl is very insecure about her small eyes. So she sent her boyfriend a picture of her with her natural eyes and photoshopped eyes that were bigger. She asked, which one do you think is prettier? What do you guys think is the right answer? The right answer he should have said was, obviously your natural eyes because they're beautiful the way they are. But guess what? He said the Photoshop eyes, and they had a big argument. Understanding their perspective is not easy because it's difficult to know what they're looking for without good communication. That brings me to my next point, heartbreak. Heartbreaks can affect your mental health. And what do? You go tell your friends about what happened. But guess what? They honestly don't care. They just pretend to listen to your rants and show fake empathy just to make you feel better. And not only does your mentality fall apart, you have to also get rid of the physical things that remind you of them. Your favorite memories and pictures or the gifts that they spent their money on, which brings me back to my previous point that relationships are essentially a waste of money. All of that just to go back into the trash. But if you were to be single, you could have treated yourself with the money you worked hard for. Give yourself space and time and not go through a mentally draining heartbreak. Also, sorry to break it to you, but you probably won't get married to them. So you end up just wasting a bunch of time when you could have been doing something else. However, let's say you do get married, that means you'll be stuck with the person for the rest of your life. That's unfortunate. And even if you do get married, there's a possibility that things may go wrong and, you could divorce. Being single gives you an opportunity to pursue your interests as an individual, which is just as important. Maintaining a healthy relationship and staying single helps you focus on yourself more by developing self-love through self-care, which is really important because you need to love yourself first before loving others. This is why the stigma of being single is false. Thank you for listening, and if you're interested, hit me up.
You better work. Thank you so much, Debbie. That was really, I love the scenario and the role playing. All that dialogue was just, I lived. That was so good. Next, after Debbie, we have Chris Yang, and we also have, oh wait, hold on. I know Tina was supposed to go. Tina, are you ready to present now?
Yep, thank you, Debbie.
Okay, great. So whenever you're ready, we will start the timer.
Okay. So hi, my name is Tina, and I want to talk about misrepresentation in the history and the media information.
Wow.
I don't mean to disrespect my first draft of the speech because that took me 5 hours, or anyone who believes in the importance of social problems. But I truly believe that today's focus must be our planet Earth. So 4,845, that's the number of toilet papers used during lifetime of you if you live for 85 years. 270,000 trees are cut down daily only to manufacture the toilet papers. And we can do more calculations, everything else that you use, like water, electricity, clothes, food, and etc. And if you want more numbers, by 2050, the researchers said that the world population would increase to 9.7 billion people, causing more ice caps to melt due to increased temperature. And if temperature increases, the sea level rises, the animals die, forests are burned out with more frequent wildfires, all the bad stuff. And I don't really mean to suggest total genocide on human beings or more budget on space exploitation to find a second Earth, because that is totally unrealistic. But I do want all of you to realize that we don't really have much time left than we think. We no longer have luxury of simply going to shopping without concerns of bringing shopping bags. We don't have luxury of throwing organics waste without putting the compost bins. We no longer have the luxury of buying crazy amount of gifts or food during the holiday season. And as I state these facts to my friends and my family, they call me pessimistic girl, a realist, and a crazy environmentalist sometimes. They mock me, they make fun of me, and they doesn't change their habits immediately, which I completely understand because nobody wants to be scolded or criticized for doing their usual, regular human activities. Nobody likes to be preached by their 17 years daughter at 5 o'clock in the morning about use of fossil fuels as they drive me to school. Nobody likes to be nagged about, by their friends about using unrecyclable soft plastics as they drink bubble tea. But these comments cannot be viewed as a stressor on unnecessary advices anymore, because these daily reminders about use of resources or prevention of climate change must be normalized. Finding the solutions for climate change is already done, but we as humanities still haven't transferred the track of taking action upon it. The ideas such as carbon taxation on business is yet to be enforced. The use of electric cars are still expensive for everyone to acquire, and we still drink bubble teas with soft plastic containers. But nevertheless, the society must adapt to incorporating these solutions in their daily lives, and everyone must be a team of heroes to save Earth. Unfortunately, we don't live as cavemen anymore. So we need to take these problems into considerations. And as for now, 41,415 species are on the red list of endangered and extinction. So as you wake up next morning, I want all of you, including the judges and the students, to annoy everyone you know. I want you to remind your mother to use less paper towels and use reusable towels at the kitchen. I want you to force your friends to bring refillable cups when you go to Starbucks, And I want you to remind yourself that Earth needs your help, and you can do at least one thing per day to help her. I hope that as people adapt to having these habits, so that society moves on to stop the progress of climate change, so that someday we all can be the environmentalist who doesn't annoy the neighbors, but we all understand each other. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Tina. And yeah, it's really important that we all tap into this environmental consciousness and all play our part in making sure that our world doesn't become inhabitable. So thank you for making that call of action. I really appreciated that, Tina. So after Tina, we have Chris Yang, and then Daniel Jun, and then Ashley Won. Chris, Daniel, Ashley, are you here?
Yes.
I'm here.
And what about Chris? I don't see Chris here today. Okay, then Daniel, you're up next. And after Ashley it will be Andrew Kim. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'll begin. Twitter.com. I don't even know where to start with Twitter and my beef with it. But here's the perspective of a guy who just doesn't use social media that much. So, congratulations. Twitter has become so relevant today. Yay! Maybe it's just me, but isn't Twitter just tiring? My gosh, why do people even spend time on the platform? Like, do you guys not know that tweets limit the number of characters you could type, and that leads to misinformation everywhere? I always see people constantly ranting on Twitter. It's becoming a waste of time. Like, cool, Twitter banned Trump, and so what? It's not even a big deal. And somehow, everybody makes a fuss about it, you know? Let's face it, though. Twitter is literally a meme. And I repeat that one more time. Twitter is a meme. And I would say that on one hand, we have some funny tweets, all right? And memes like the one that goes like, 6,541st day of quarantine. Currently plucking all my arm hair out with my toe. Like, cool. Like, that's pretty funny, you know? But we can talk about the other side. And the annoying side of Twitter. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. It's that continuing beef between conservatives and liberals and dumb cancel culture. Every now and then, you'll see a Photoshop, stupid-looking, ranting Donald Trump meme or a meme of Mike Pence with a fly on his head. I swear, you will, with no doubt, see that every single day. 100% guarantee. As you scroll down the comments of a tweet from a Biden supporter, you'll definitely see that one Trump supporter commenting, rigged election, or like if Trump is better than Joe, guns are rights, Sleepy Joe. When you glance down at the comments from a conservative's tweet, you'll receive some very, very nice comments like, bigot, ugly, orange-faced man, ha 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 ha, so amazing that you're so racist. Look, I'm not taking any political stance, but this is getting pretty irritating. And okay, and let's go to the other side now. Okay, let's go to the celebrity Twitter accounts too. See, a bunch of people are hating on celebrities and spam some nasty comments there. And like, whoa, please chill out. Celebrities are people too, okay? And those celebrity cult followers or stans have to imbue themselves in serenity. Why? Because I see their comments everywhere. So please, everyone, calm down. I want everyone here to take a breather and walk outside. Go around the park. Chill out. Delete the app or block the website. Don't look at it every single day and get infuriated every single time. Be rational about it and understand that there isn't anything productive that comes out of it. People are getting canceled all the time because at times tweets are being taken out of context and it doesn't explain anything. And because there's misinformation everywhere, there's really nothing productive about it. So just don't waste your time on Twitter for 30 minutes, please. If you do the math correctly for using Twitter for 30 minutes, you'll realize that you'll lose a week out of the 365 days that you have. So if you spend more than 30 minutes using Twitter, then you're losing more than a week of your time in this whole year. So just do something else for those 7 days, and you'll do anything else. You can do anything else that is productive, and you can better yourself as a human being too. So thanks for listening, and this is just my thing about Twitter. So yeah.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, I think we can all agree that social media, especially Twitter in particular, can be a cesspool for all kinds of social mess. So thanks for speaking on that, Daniel. I really appreciate it. After Daniel, we have Ashley 1, and then after Ashley will be Andrew Kim, and after Andrew will be Daniel Kim. So Ashley, whenever you're ready, we will start the timer.
Since 1976, there have been a total of 1,532 executions. According to USA Facts, between 1977 and 2018, there are 1,490 executions in 34 states and 2,567 prisoners on death row at the end of 2018. These numbers may be incomparable to the 150,000 people that die each day around the world, but behind these people, there are people. 1,532 people are dead. Dead because we as human beings felt that it was right to kill them, because they were criminals. But let me ask you one question. Who are we to declare that it is okay to end one's life? The death penalty, also referred to as capital punishment, has long been sentenced to defendants who have been found guilty of intentionally killing or engaging in an act of violence while knowing that the life of the victim was at risk. The elimination of capital punishment has always been controversial, with some supporters of the elimination claiming it is unethical for the convicted to die, and opposers insisting that the death penalty preserves law and order. However, I believe that the moral question surrounding the capital punishment has less to do with whether those convicted of heinous crimes deserve to die than with whether the governments deserve to kill those whom are imprisoned. The death penalty does not do much aside from promoting an immoral justice system. When the government decides to seek out vengeance by disguising it as justice, it is simply following the mindset of killers who devalue human life. This mentality of an eye for an eye is wrong in itself, as it implies that killing someone is okay if it is to reciprocate the harm that the person has inflicted on others. But like we all heard when we were younger, if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you? In addition to the immorality of the act, the death penalty is just another form of social injustice by disproportionately targeting people of color and people who cannot afford a good defense system, feeding into the racist and classist ideas that are embedded into our society. According to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, people of color account for 43% of total execution since 1976 and 55% of those currently on the death row. Mind you, these executions also include situations in which individuals sentenced to death were later discovered to be innocent because of exculpatory evidence. The uneven application of the death penalty also reveals that the killers of Black people are less likely to face the death penalty than killers of white people, because cases with white victims were more likely to be investigated. Just like how the race of the defendant impacts whether they are put on death row, a large part of the death row population is made up of those who receive poor legal representation due to their lack of wealth. Our criminal justice system has been created to only serve the wealthy whites of the country, and the death penalty will always be a symbol of white control over Blacks. And yes, one may argue that the death penalty deters crimes. However, this has constantly been proven false. There is no detectable effect of capital punishment on crime. Similar statistics of homicide in Canada and the United States have been compared to see if the restoration of the death penalty in Canada and the United States have been compared have been deterred possible criminals from committing heinous crimes, and studies have shown that the people who commit murder give little to no thought to the possible consequences of their actions. So this means that people who contemplate on murdering someone will not be convinced because of the presence of death penalty or life without parole, because they're just not planning to get caught in the first place. The American Civil Liberties Union, or the ACLU, states that in a civilized society, we reject the principle of literally doing to criminals what they do to their victims. The penalty for rape cannot be rape. The penalty for arson cannot be the burning down of the arsonist's house. Therefore, we should not punish the murderer with death. As I end my speech, I would like to leave you with one final question. If the death penalty is still constitutional, what makes us any different from the murderers? Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. What a great topic. Yeah, it really does raise this question of what right does the law or any of us have to decide whether a person deserves to die or to live, right? So thank you so much for speaking on that and for including all those great sources. After Ashley, we have... Okay, so we have Andrew, and after Andrew, we have Daniel Kim, and then after Daniel, we have Eddie Kang. Is Eddie Kang here? I see your name, but I don't know if you're at your keyboard. All
Sorry,
right.
I was trying to mute.
Okay, great. So we have Andrew, Daniel, Eddie, and then we have Hezu. And after Hezu, we have Hannah Yoon. So Andrew, whenever you're ready, we will start the timer.
Thank you. So since the pandemic, the corona has affected our lives in many ways. It has even made people have to stay inside of their homes more than before. And also due to the pandemic, it has made our own social lives and interactions with friends are not possible. The coronavirus has also benefited people in some ways, such as where we are able to interact with friends and family through online services and devices such as games, Zoom meetings, YouTube streaming, etc. And as I have said, the pandemic has changed our lives. The pandemic has kept going and has not stopped, which is ironic. And to say it has made people become more careful and more cautious of going outside. And because of this, it has also led us into doing more work inside rather than doing work outside of our homes. Nevertheless, the pandemic has helped and changed our lives in good ways by making streaming and video games become a place where people are able to cope with issues that were made with the pandemic, causing people to play games that they love. For example, as this pandemic, there were ways that I was able to cope through this pandemic by playing video games such as Call of Duty, as many people would, and talking to friends through Discord. So as I talk more about how games are being used during the pandemic, I would like to ask everyone on who you have watched or played during this pandemic to keep your lives fun. To answer this, video games have also brought communities together so that whenever people need help, they know that there is a community to support them. The pandemic has also caused financial issues to come to every industry, but this has also caused many good benefits for the gaming industry, which comes to say that people have also started to stream and play video games due to staying home. The companies that people have been streaming and playing games on are starting to earn money based on the increasing numbers of viewers that the streamers are receiving. It has made it where people could do both things, where it could also make money and become an entertainer for people outside in the community to watch. The increase in money has increased throughout the pandemic through games because of the increase of people wanting to watch people do things because of their boredom. The virus has done many bad things and good things for us. But I would like to say that even though we may feel like we are alone at home because of this virus, there are ways that we are able to interact with friends and family. And I know that we can get through this if we know that there is a community always with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, video games have been a great source of comfort, I think, for a lot of people during this pandemic and new ways of connecting with others. Although on that same vein, my partner has been very much immersed in Warzone these days. So there's not that much connection and communication. Ooh. Anyway, I digress. So great job. After Andrew, we have Daniel Kim. So Daniel, whenever you're ready, we will start the clock. Daniel, I see your
Hello.
name.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
My mic was on mute. So hello guys. So my name is Daniel Kim, and the topic that I'll be talking in my speech is about racism and hate crimes against the Asian community. Well, during this pandemic, there has been a huge increase in the activities of Asian discrimination and multiple hate crimes, such as killing, spitting, racist comments, and even robbing of Asian stores and even communities. Before I go into my speech, I want to clarify that racism against the Asian community has a history that goes way back centuries. So this means that this social issue that is happening today isn't something that has just come up in history. As you may have seen on the news, but as more Asian hate crimes are increasing, it seemed like all the attacks were pressured amongst the elderly of our Asian community and the community itself. Because of these things happening, it made my family worried about my family's safety and other relatives. The most worrying thing that I got from this was about my grandparents. The reason why is because still to this day, my grandparents live in Oakland, which is a high crime rated city in California. And also, I also want to tell the story of when I was young and how I experienced or heard about hate crimes that were targeted against my mom. And so there's two incidents of these hate crimes happening to my mom while we were living in Oakland. And these are only stories that I've heard from my mom. But while we were living in Oakland, my mom was held at gunpoint by an African American at a certain bank that is located in Oakland. Also, the second incident that happened in Oakland was when my mom went to a laundry room that was underneath my grandparents' apartment. And when my mom was in that laundry room, she out of nowhere she was attacked by an African American and gonna rob of her money. And from those incidents, it just made me feel different about African Americans. However, as I've grown up, I've seen, a different aspect of how African Americans, act. And, most of my friends right now are African American or Hispanic or just Asian. And, it really shows a difference. Anyways, I will continue and go back to the regular scheduled program. So, still to this day, never mind. While these attacks were happening, no news broadcasts had ever covered the stories about these type of issues. But as more Asian attacks were being known by the community, more news broadcasts were aware of it. Nevermore, the Asian community had to step up and spread awareness and tell others that these things were happening. Nevertheless, it seemed like the community never ever really cared about these attacks happening to our Pacific community. It also pisses me off when people that supported the BLM movement don't give the same energy to when Asian Americans are getting attacked in this country. And I've seen these examples on my friend's story because there was this one girl. I'm not gonna mention her name because it's disrespectful to do that. But there's this one girl that at my old school in Vegas, and she was nonstop, supporting BLM, but then like when these Asian attacks were happening, she didn't um like put awareness on her page, and it just really pissed me off, and it made me like very frustrated about these things. And so I just want to continue, and I don't want to get pissed off, and I just don't want to be mad for it, and start punching holes in my walls because of these things. But yeah, I'll just continue. So as of this week, there was a shooting that happened in Atlanta at 3 Asian massage spas. Therefore, 8 innocent Asian women were killed. And this was a very sad moment for the victims' families and the whole Asian community itself. Before I go, I also want to send condolences to the victims' families, and just the whole Asian community itself. From this event, we think that it made minorities think more about these attacks and try to think of ways to help out the Asian community in some sort of way. However, why does it take a whole massacre to open people's eyes on extreme hate crimes against another race? Well, it is because people don't truly understand that if these social issues go to the extreme, that there will be extreme consequences coming with it. For example, the shooter regarding the Atlanta shooting. This major issue has sparked people to start spreading awareness and to help the Asian community. The only true solution that will be able to stop these hate crimes and forms of racism is to spread awareness and make our voice heard. It should be noted that all races matter, and if one race is being tormented by others, then the only thing to do is to help them and build each other up to stop these awful things. Finally, the final thing that I want to say before to end this speech off is that these issues have made it to where Asians should not be ridiculed as pawns and weak human beings just that cannot stand for themselves, because I believe that as a community that we can stand up for ourselves and try to make a difference in this country. And thank you for hearing my speech.
Thank you, Daniel. And I'm really sorry to hear what your family has experienced. That must have been really hard for your mom and really hard for you as her child. So thanks for talking about that. I feel your anger. I think we all feel the anger as well in light of what's happened in Atlanta. Moving on, let's hear from Eddie Kang. Eddie, are you here?
Yes.
Excellent. So whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer.
On July 16th, 1945, the world's first nuclear weapon was detonated just south of Los Alamos, New Mexico. Only 3 months later, the US dropped the infamous Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombs that decimated the city and killed nearly 200,000 people. Tens of thousands were instantly vaporized and exposed to a blast as hot as the surface of the sun. Many more died from the intense radiation that came after the explosion. The development and introduction of nuclear weapons has and will cause the deaths of countless people. Nuclear weapons must be banned because of their catastrophic impact and world-ending potential. Modern-day nuclear bombs have even greater potential than those of World War II. Plutonium cores can release 20 million times the energy per kilogram than that of TNT. A recent study showed that an exchange with just 100 nuclear warheads would kill tens of millions and release trillions of kilograms of debris into the atmosphere, which would blot out the sun and cause a worldwide ice age. This would in turn cause crop failure, starvation, governmental collapse, and is estimated in the end to kill a third of the entire human population. Another study by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists estimated that just a single nuclear bomb detonated in a major American city could cause a global recession, lower the global GDP by 2%, and throw 30 million people into poverty. Countries around the world have stockpiled nuclear weapons to the point where there currently exists 13,000 nuclear warheads worldwide. 90% of these are either Russian or American. This number will only continue to expand, as the only protection against nuclear weapons is to have them yourself, and to show that you're not afraid to use them if another country attacks. An accidental nuclear war is very plausible and would mean the end of human history as we know it. In 1962, during the Cold War, military bases around the US were set up with F-106 fighter jets that contained nuclear missiles to use against the Soviet Union if an attack ever happened. These bombs had the potential to destroy everything inside a quarter-mile radius. On October 26th, at one of these bases, a guard on watch duty sighted what seemed to be an intruder and set the alarm off. However, the alarms at the Wisconsin military base were incorrectly wired and accidentally set off the alarm that signaled Soviet attack instead of the alarm for an intruder. Pilots rushed to their jets and were about to take off with the nuclear weapons, but were stopped last minute by a man in a Jeep. The intruder turned out to be a bear that almost caused World War III. The absolute destruction that could come from a simple mistake goes to show how unstable our current state of nuclear tension is. Nuclear weapons must be banned because of how easily our world could end at any moment.
Thank you, Eddie. Great topic. I didn't know that about that incident you spoke, that you mentioned just now, and that was really interesting and honestly pretty scary to think about, that something as innocuous as a bear could trigger, another global war. So thanks for sharing. We are winding down. So after Eddie, now we have Hezu, and then Hannah Yoon will be the final presentation tonight. Hezu, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Excellent. So whenever you're ready, we will start the clock.
Okay. All right, I'm ready. Looking at the news today about Myanmar will give you some troubling headlines. Myanmar coup, 183 dead in Myanmar military crackdown. Myanmar, protesters killed after police opened fire. More than 235 dead as police escalate violence. What is happening? Why? There is chaos, there is corruption, there is unrest, death, and murder. Right now, I am researching the Gwangju 1980 military coup for my extended essay topic for my international baccalaureate diploma, which is basically just it's like high school, but on a level 10 difficulty. But while totally unintentional, I noticed a pattern in world events from what is happening right now in Myanmar to this event that happened in South Korea 40 years ago. The Gwangju Uprising, also called the May 18th Democratic Uprising, and the 5월 18일 Gwangju Mityun-운동, started between peaceful protesters and the military army, aided no hesitation using tanks and guns lethally against not only the unarmed protesters but innocent citizens. And it was a horrific display against democracy and a violent flaw of their corrupt power. And around 2,000 people who are estimated to have been killed, but the true figure has been obfuscated for many decades. And even the current estimation is modest because of how long this has been covered up for. And now we get into one of the most frustrating aspects of the Gwangju protest, the media blackout. The military-controlled government did everything they could to prevent any news from spreading outside the city, and it worked. And I recommend the movie Taxi Driver if you haven't watched it yet and are interested in this topic, because it's about a foreign journalist and this taxi driver from Seoul, and they travel to Gwangju and they find out about the siege in Gwangju, and they're totally taken aback from it. And it's a really good movie. But we should get back to the headlines. South Korean civic forces joined forces to fight against Myanmar coup. South Korea to suspend defense exchanges with Myanmar, reconsider aid. South Korea to halt military exchanges with Myanmar, ban military supply exports. When people found out that Korea was exporting tear gas and weapons to Myanmar, they were horrified. It was like a country that suffered and knew firsthand how horrible military government coups were, was supporting the violence in the same situation, just in a different country. My mom had walked through tear gas on the way home from school, and she was absolutely not the only one who had an experience like this in their childhood. Because the memory of May 18th is so fresh in Korea's collective mind, people can't help but think, what would we want other countries to do when we were going through that? A lot of people, not just people, entire countries have been at a loss of how to help Myanmar. Myanmar's previous president, Aung San Suu Kyi, who I found out while researching this topic for this speech, was actually given a Nobel Peace Prize for bringing democracy back to Myanmar from another military coup before. But a decade later, she used her power over the military to violently discriminate against Muslim communities, and a lot of people wanted her Nobel Peace Prize taken away. And if people are seriously discussing if you should have your Nobel Peace Prize take back, you goofed up, you didn't do good. And it is way less than ideal that only countries who went through the same things themselves are the only ones helping Myanmar currently, and that other countries do not feel the same empathy naturally. But with Myanmar having two things that Gwangju desperately needed but lacked in the 80s, outside support and global media coverage, hopefully the Myanmar coup will resolve better than what happened in the past. This time around, we can reflect on the events in the past to help us know what to do in the present. Thanks.
Great job, Hezu. Thanks so much for talking about the Gwangju massacre and tying it with what's going on in Myanmar right now. I mean, the common thread is state violence, right? And it is disturbing to how you described, South Korea's exporting its aid to this violent coup and suppression of the people. So great connection there. I love that. And if you guys don't know about the Gwangju massacre, I highly recommend you look into it. It's a pretty dark and upsetting part of our history as Korean people, but I think that there is a lot that we can learn about the importance of mobilizing and raising our voices to fight for our rights. So once again, great job, Hezu. And Hannah, you are the last presenter today. Is Hannah ready?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So whenever you're ready, I will start the timer.
I'm ready. You come home from a 7-hour day at school only to find that you have 5 minutes to rest before you have to slave away to homework for the rest of the night. You wake up, go to school, go home to complete homework, and then sleep again. How many times have you experienced this constant cycle? I know I've experienced this far too many times. My extreme dark circles are proof of all the all-nighters I pulled, countless amount of nights, to barely finish homework. It is safe to say that it is evident that the cons of excessive homework heavily outweigh the pros. First, by staying up at night to complete excessive amounts of homework from multiple classes each day, many students experience both mental and physical health problems. There have been rising levels of anxiety amongst students who feel pressured to complete their tasks and meet the deadlines. According to research by Denise Pope, a senior lecturer at Stanford University, too much homework can diminish its effectiveness and even be counterproductive. They cite prior research indicating that homework benefits plateau at about 2 hours per night, and then 90 minutes to 2.5 hours is optimal for high school. More than half of these Californian high school students claim that homework was their primary stressor and led to sleep deprivation and other problems such as weight loss, stomach problems, and chronic headaches. A smaller New York University study published in 2015 noted similar findings. That study, which appeared in Frontiers in Psychology, noted serious health effects for high schoolers, such as chronic stress, emotional exhaustion, and alcohol and drug use. More than 2/3 of students said they abused alcohol and drugs, primarily marijuana, to cope with stress. They also faced pressure to take college-level classes and excel in activities outside of school. Many students felt they were being asked to work as hard as adults and noted that their workload seemed inappropriate for their development level. Second, the stages of elementary school to high school are pivotal for a child's development. Why should they be forced to choose between socializing with their peers and forming memories so they could sit down in front of their desk for hours at a time to finish these assignments? Many students feel the pressure to get outstanding grades, and the completion of quality homework takes up a large portion of this. Students shouldn't feel the need to choose between maintaining their grades and interacting with their family members and friends, but they should have a balance of both. Published in the American Journal of Family Therapy, a 2015 study surveyed more than 1,000 parents in Rhode Island with school-age children. Kindergarteners receive 25 minutes of homework per night on average, but according to the standards set by the NEA and MPTA, they shouldn't be receiving any at all. As the quantity of homework, but not the quality, increases, students may feel alienated from society and unable to appropriately converse with their peers. Children should take the time to discover their talents and their interests, but due to the pressure of receiving high marks, they are unable to find a recreational activity to ease stress. As a high school student, I still feel like I have little time for relaxing or creative activities. Lastly, many students feel that homework assignments have no correlation to their actual lessons and they are simply busy work. Because of this, many students resort to cheating to receive a full grade for completing the work, which goes against the whole purpose of assigning homework. Many people who say that there should be no limits on homework claim that homework is necessary to develop healthy habits, such as being more independent. Clearly, this isn't the case, as students simply search the homework questions online or use photomath for the sole purpose of finding their task and turning it in. Thus, increasing the number of assignments will only increase the burden on students, being counterproductive. Homework may be productive if assigned in small increments and directly relate to the lesson from the school day. The goal isn't to ban homework, but simply reduce the workload from students and ease their burden. If teachers are more mindful of the amount of homework they assign, students' mental health and social skills could be significantly improved. Homework is meant to promote healthy habits such as not procrastinating, promoting learning outside of school, and learning independence. However, with the excess amount of homework assignments from multiple courses and teachers each day, this daily cycle can definitely be detrimental and draining. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Hannah. And I'm sure we can all agree the last thing we need for our mental well-being is more homework, right? So thanks so much for talking about that. That is all of our presentations for today. I know we're almost out of time. It's 8:58 here on the East Coast. So thank you to everybody for bearing with us. I do believe that the judges panel is going to need 10 to 15 minutes to deliberate so that we can select the winners of our speech competition from the past session and then this session. So if you have somewhere to be and you already have some other schedules to meet, don't let us keep you. But if you could stick around for like 10, 15 minutes while we make our final decisions, we'll come back to the main room and we will announce the winners. So just take a brief break, hang tight, and we will be back with the final decisions. All right. All right, so the judges have deliberated. We've made our final decisions for the speech competition. Thank you to each and every single one of you